Okay, if we all have our seats. Mr. Harris, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Farmer.
Here.
Ms. Byrd.
Here.
Ms. Cook.
Present.
Mr. Dasty.
Present.
Ms. Lyons.
Here.
Mr. Feldman.
Here.
Mr. McGrath. Ms. Rufo.
Here.
And Chairman Evans.
Here. Do we have a quorum?
We do.
Okay, having a quorum, we are now in session. First order of business is approval of the minutes from last Thursday's meeting. You all sent copies of them. Are there any corrections or additions to be made to them? Right. Hearing none, do I have unanimous consent to approve the minutes as written?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Hear no objections, the minutes are approved. Next item, report from the chair. I have one item was a request from the city that as we move forward, there is a challenge in having commissioners meet remotely and how to set it up so that it can be heard, so that the audience can hear what is going on, and so that the person who's not able to attend in person can actually will be able to actively participate in the meeting. And with that came a request that we provide the city with a minimum of 2 days' notice so that they can set up the necessary equipment to have this done.
Okay.
I would say, can we get a motion to say that as we move forward, or change the amend the bylaws so that we have a 2-day notice in order to be considered meeting remotely? There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion?
What is the
This is
timeline now?
There isn't one.
This is so if someone cannot attend in person,
So
but wants to participate remotely, the city has time to set up the appropriate technology so it functions.
to set up a laptop and hook it into the sound system so that
Yep.
we can all hear, they can hear us, we can hear them, the audience can hear, yes.
Okay.
And just asking for 2 days.
That makes sense to
I
me.
actually think that's a big ask. Like,
You don't know.
yeah, sometimes you just don't know. I mean, like, I understand the logic behind it. I'm not faulting the logic there, but this is not a complex issue, or at least I have just different experience with audiovisual, so I don't think it's as complex that it needs 2 days of notice. Maybe like 2 hours, maybe.
I
But
think we have to respect the city staff's time, and to say that they only need 2 hours to help us with something is a little bit, if I only was asked to do something in 2 hours at work without any advance notice, and I had other stuff to do on my plate, I might be a little frustrated.
no, I get that. But once these are more system-based problems, and I think changing it for like now a 2-day notice is required for every meeting. I think it's more, I understand there's technical issues at the city right now with the audiovisual for remote participation, but I don't think we should change our bylaws because of that.
Besides you feeling as if it's not complex, in your experience, what's the other disadvantage of 2 days ahead of time?
Just if somebody has something that pops up in their personal life the day of or the day before, like then out the window, there's their opportunity to participate.
That's the only thing that I see with it, because something could pop up unexpectedly. I mean, I know when I'm taking my vacation, I can surely tell you that, but, what if I find out tomorrow I have COVID and I still want to participate? I mean, I would say like maybe a day's notice, like, is that unreasonable? Like for the city to consider?
I'm just relating the city asked for a minimum of 2 days, preferably 3, so I just cut it to the 2.
Okay.
I don't know how it's required, what they have to do. I'm respecting the city's wishes and trying to work with them so that we can have an effective meeting. Mr. Feldman.
A day seems fine, so I move to amend my motion to make it the day.
Okay, there's a motion to amend.
I wouldn't go short of that.
There's a motion to amend. Is there a second for the motion to amend?
Second.
A second.
Okay, a motion to amend is not debatable.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just
Yes.
as a practical matter, any motion you make is not binding on the city. So again, it's your obligation under the Sunshine Act to hold a meeting. So, whether you make it 1 day, 2 days, if the technology isn't available, the person won't be able to participate remotely. So the city has made its request based on, it's the same policy.
Their ability.
It's with city council, and because of the technology issues, as the mayor indicated last week, that will be addressed, but unfortunately aren't going to be addressed in this room until closer to October, to try and accommodate the Sunshine Act requirements. So, but you can pass whatever motion you want, but if one day and the city doesn't get the technology, you're still in the same position of then making a decision here
Okay.
as to whether that remote is actually doable.
And the city did say 2 days. There's a motion to amend, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Nay. One,
Yeah.
motion passes. So the motion is now to allow that we will require our members to provide a minimum of 1 day notice to, I guess it would be to me, and to let the city know and recognize the challenges of the city. Any other discussion?
I just think that it's something we shouldn't do because it's not a standard for other boards, commissions, and authorities as far as I'm aware.
Well, actually, I
Barry
think
just
the
said
solicitor
the
just said
city
it,
council
actually it
has 2
is.
days.
Oh, the city council has a standard of 2 days.
They have a
I didn't
2
hear
days.
that part for specific. Okay. All right.
Any other discussion?
I mean, I guess at the end of the day, the whole intention of this is to keep transparency of the whole organization and keep the public informed, which I think is our highest
Yes.
order, rather than our inconvenience around something. I think I would suggest that just as a practice, if people can certainly listen in if they want to, but if they're not going to be counted and be able to vote and be part of, to establish a quorum,
Yes.
all those things, but I would encourage people that can't be here for whatever reason, that they can still be here and participate in that way as a viewer or listener.
Yes. Any other discussion? Okay, I will call the question. All in favor of allotting a minimum of 1 day notice to the city if any member of the commission will be participating remotely? Say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, by a vote of 7-1, the motion passes. Thank you. That's the only items I have for report. Next item, public comments. Thank you for being here. We have 2 public times for public comments, so if any member of the public would like to speak, to address the commission, please get up to the lectern. Is the sound turned on? Just to make sure.
You just have to press the button.
Yeah, and please give us your name and the street on which you live, and if you would, please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, Justin Kennel, 300 block of East Clay Street. Just to briefly touch on something from last time, I agree with the majority. Term limits are silly for council people. If people want to vote for their council person over and over again, like will of the people, I don't know. The second thing I want to talk about is districts. I do not know what the right thing is for Lancaster City because I am a single person who hasn't lived here very long. But I'm interested in what the findings of a committee formed by y'all would find out, both on like the effects of at-large on the city of Lancaster and how that affects the council makeup. And there is just a lot of literature on how at-large districts can both, they have pros and cons, and how single-member districts also have pros and cons. So just how cities like Lancaster have benefited, how things have gone poorly for them when switching to single district. So I think further discussion around it is warranted. I don't think it's as easy as saying, does council work or not right now, because it's a complicated thing and work is kind of subjective. And I also don't think it's as easy as saying like, well, it's all Democrats. Like, even with districts, it's probably all going to be Democrats. They're pretty evenly spread throughout the city. So, like, that's it. I appreciate everything y'all are doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments, please?
Hi, guys. Matt Alsbach, Nevin Street. I just wanted to, first off, thank you guys for having me. I know you're working hard and making difficult decisions, and I certainly don't envy you. I also try to stay out of the fray of, political stuff, but I feel like everybody's voice needs to be heard. So I submitted my main comments online, so I won't reiterate a majority of it. However, thank you, Amy, for responding back today. So I believe home rule can definitely be beneficial. Stricter environmental laws, for example, codifying legal protections, etc. But it can also be detrimental, especially when it comes to being and requiring high-level confidence in the people who are your local elected leaders. The fact is, with us specifically, home rule seems to be more about taxation and really nothing more. Lancaster City, and correct me if I'm wrong, is already the highest tax municipality in Lancaster County. Is that correct? Yes, as of today. So with this, you're essentially handing the keys to the kingdom, right, without any oversight and hoping that people will do the right thing. Let me give you a scenario which is probably more typical, is with regards to, let's say that I have a credit card, right, and I overspend my credit card, and then because of increased property taxes, has anyone been to the grocery store recently? It's horrific. You have to stick with this budget, and you have to stick with it. You can't just say, oh, I overspent, and then look around and say, how am I going to go get more? I certainly haven't had a raise in multiple years, and that's just because of the climate that we're in. So I read your opinion on removing council members and agree with you definitely that you shouldn't just be able to remove someone because you don't like them. I mean, that's really not how that works. The court, I believe, is very wasteful, and of course, moving through it is glacial at best. So maybe not the best use of our time. And then you talked about incapacitation, and what I really think about is incapacitation is like if someone has a stroke, et cetera, and they're incapacitated to, well, of course, that's something that should be addressed. But I feel like you guys need to drill down a little bit into how not representing their constituents and how that actually looks. And finally, I know we talk about this as well as term limits, but I don't believe that any one set political career is a lifetime career. I know you stated provisional with regards to your addressing of that. However, but I think you need to reevaluate. 2 terms is very long. 8 years is a long time. That's the lifespan of a kangaroo. Like, nobody's political career in one section should last longer than a kangaroo.
If I make 3 minutes, if you can.
Yeah, finally. So just real quick, this team was really elected to represent me and the constituents. You don't represent one administration at all. I don't think any undue persuasion or influence on you should be allowed at all. I really think that that's an ethical issue if that ever happens. And thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Other public comments? Okay, thank you. Moving on, next item on the agenda is deliberations on form of government. So the plan is to discuss the controller office, the treasurer, and as time permits, at least introduction into the mayor's office. At this point, without objection, I'd like to move to a committee of the whole and allow Mr. Cross, Mr. Radig, and Ms. Shedlock, wherever, if she's, I don't know. Oh, there you are. I'm sorry, you're hiding behind Carl. And to take over facilitating this part of the meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're moving on now to the other elected officials. for the city under the optional Plan A. And we'd like to start with the Controller's Office. So you do have your homework in front of you, your information packet. But the first question we'll have is, should the city have a controller position? And currently, the third-class city code and the optional third-class city charter law, the controller is an elected officer who serves a 4-year term. The controller must be an accountant. The controller must also be bonded in an amount directed by city ordinance. The duties are responsible for examining, auditing, and settling all city accounts. The controller also countersigns all documents authorizing payment of monies out of the city treasurer when he or she is satisfied of the legality of the payment. The city code gives the controller subpoena power. The controller currently may provide city council annual or periodic statements of their examination of accounts, which will be entered into the public record. The controller also may appoint a deputy controller who serves as acting controller in the absence of the controller, and that description will be the basis of our discussion tonight. So the first question is, should the city have a controller position?
Yes.
Yes? 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 Shake, we got four
Yes.
nods, 5 nods,
Yes.
6 nods.
Hands.
Yeah, hands, Darlene, Carl?
Hands?
Should the city have a controller position?
If we just give a show of hands.
Do you want to have a discussion on that, or
No, I'm satisfied.
you're satisfied? Okay, so, okay. All right. We have a controller. Should the controller's position be an elected office or an appointed office? Some home rules appoint the controller, and some have it as an elected office.
I think it should be elected.
Opposite, I think appointed. I actually think this is where an ethics committee could come into play with an appointment, because this could be a good check on I'm comfortable with the city appointing the treasurer or having an election for treasurer, but I think a good counterbalance to that would be exploring the idea of appointing them through the ethics commission, because then they can vet people more properly and find a good accountant.
As opposed to this people voting for the controller? Okay,
Chair, so
interesting.
I too have thought about the controller's role in relation to a potential ethics group, and I never, in my opinion on that, thought it would be wise for the ethics board, should there be one, to appoint the controller, but that the controller kind of serve as potentially the chair of that group, should there be one. So I think if it were not to be wrapped into the ethics group, I would also be satisfied for it to be an appointed position of the council as a counterbalance to the role of the mayor. But I have very ambiguous feelings about that, so I could see it either of those two ways personally.
Tell me more, Tony, about why you think an appointed position makes sense.
An appointed position, this is one of those positions that we know has been going to come up before us at a point, but I think all of us have at one point or another tried to wrap our heads around what exactly a controller is. The way I see it is this is someone who does a financial look through the city and is supposed to be separate from essentially everything else in some sense. With the way electoral politics work, unless we want to have a conversation about nonpartisan elections, I don't know if any exploration has been done to determine whether or not those are legal. It's the partisan aspect that puts me in I think an ethics commission appointment would make more sense to me if that were a mechanism we agreed upon. But I just have some complex thoughts, and I think some of those will also come out when we talk about the treasurer.
I would say that I think that the controller should be, the people should vote for that position. I just feel that their voice should be heard, and I would say that's where I'm leaning more towards.
Yeah, I feel that way because the position is supposed to be a check and balance on council and mayor and the administration and what they're spending. So it feels like to me it should be the people who are making the decision about who that person they want to check and balance, the administration.
I guess my question would be like, what do you think about, because as a third party person, sometimes I look at tickets and endorsements, and what I guess I'm trying to avoid is the perception that because someone may be endorsed by a party, that it is partisan, which is why I just want to see if we can detract this from partisanship at all, and just appointments seem like somewhat of an effective way to do it. But I'm interested in elections if we can do nonpartisan ones. Like, that makes it more appealing.
I don't think we can
You have to vote.
legally.
Can we?
How could it be that?
Elected positions going to be governed by the election code.
Right.
So it has to be a partisan
Yeah.
race.
Governed by the election code.
Yeah.
All right.
Mr. Feldman, do you have something? Okay, I'll add in. I agree with Mr. Dastra. I would prefer to see an appointed controller. Companies hire accounting firms to audit the company books all the time. And a requirement, and what is being said is that unless they are elected, they cannot be independent. And I disagree with that. They have effectively and I'm probably misusing the term, but they have an effective like fiduciary responsibility, and there are laws governing their behavior. So, if I hire an accountant and I tell the accountant that he has to find my books in order and my books aren't in order, not only do I have a lot of explaining to do, but the accountant could effectively go to jail. And that's outside of me. I mean, it's not because they were wrong. I recognize elected creates a level of independence, but I think it's a more effective position. The reality is I see city council and the mayor coming together to hire an accounting firm to act as the controller, not a single elected person who may be a single CPA in private practice. That's my thought.
Is that done?
What is what then?
What Brian just
Appointing?
appointed a firm?
You can put in your charter that it could be a person or a partnership or a corporation. You could essentially appoint an accounting firm.
Seems like it would be a lot
As a
more
controller.
expensive.
Right.
Oh, yeah, but it would be.
It would be.
Say that,
You mean to pay for the person?
the firm.
The
Oh, the firm.
Or a
Versus a
person
person.
who
Yeah,
is nominated rather than elected. What is the
So-
controller again? I'm sorry.
I don't know the controller's pay. Is it it was 8,000 in the code, but I don't know what the current.
Our controller is a part-time person.
salary
It's
of the controller
part-time. Okay, thank you, darling.
One thing to go back, and just for my own benefit, and I always looked at elections in Pennsylvania as nonpartisan because the November election is, you can vote for anyone on the ballot, and your August deadline for independents to nominate themselves, circulate nominate positions for the November election. So conceivably, you could have a third party, fourth party person in the controller's role. But the election code that we have to follow, because it's uniform law, governs how the primaries operate, how the parties select. So we have to follow the election code, but there is opportunity for independent.
So my question, I think I know the answer, but just to say it publicly, we could not require the controller to be different from, say, the mayor's party. If the mayor is currently a Democrat, we could not require that the controller up for election not be a Democrat.
I don't know how you could do that without disenfranchising.
Okay,
He danced with
that's what I assumed. I just wanted to make sure of that.
Yeah, everyone has the right to run. Any other comments on appointed versus elected? I've got 3 appointed, 2 elected, with some more people to be heard.
It's a lot to think about. I like the idea of the person being vetted, and I see, our current language talks about the person being, the controller being an accountant, but is it a certified accountant? And I know it goes on to talk about that in the deputy controller position. So I like the idea of someone of that controller being vetted in some kind of way. So I don't know if being elected or being appointed, and would they be appointed by the city council?
That's the next question. If you decide to elect or appoint, then we'll discuss how to walk through that. Carl?
Can I raise something on this? Maxine, you pointed out that technically it says the person needs to be an accountant. So far as I know, I don't doubt that that is a requirement. But it is just the case that the people that have held that role have not been accountants.
Right, exactly.
And so for that reason, I'm open to having it be an elected position. Like I said, I feel very ambiguous about this, but I'd just like to say a pro in the appointment column, and I told you how I thought it should be appointed by the council, separate from the mayor, is that you could ensure that it was actually an accountant doing the work.
The term accountant is what is in the code, but as you're indicating, there's a lot of ambiguity in terms of what constitutes an accountant. You know, one of the questions on the next page is what qualifications should the controller have? And that gets to the point, Ms. Cook, you know, it could be a certified public accountant. That could be a requirement for the position. That is a licensed position in the Commonwealth.
So how does, go ahead, darling. No, go ahead, you haven't talked at all. Go ahead.
Either one, please. Okay.
I was just gonna say, how is accountant defined now for the position that we have?
Broadly, very broadly.
How do they define that? It's not.
It's not,
Okay.
it's not defined.
I'm just
It's
saying,
not
right now,
defined.
it's saying it requires an
You're
accountant.
an accountant.
The state
You're
law
an
says
accountant.
just
Right.
be an
Right.
accountant.
So if
Very broadly defined.
we could make it more specific.
You certainly can. That's
Yes.
one of the
Then what
questions.
happens, and maybe this, I don't need to know this, but I'm just curious, but like, how does that work? Like somebody runs for, the office, who checks? They actually
Election-
have
the
the
Bureau of
election
Election, they have
board?
to certify.
I
Okay,
mean, I think you could have a real problem finding a candidate though,
Yes.
because
because it's a part-time
it's a
position.
part-time position and
Well,
a
we
professional
could change
accountant.
that if we're
Currently a
changing,
part-time position.
Right.
we could change that
You
if we're
certainly can.
changing the responsibilities of the controller.
You certainly
I
can.
mean, right now, our controller doesn't do all the things that, was listed here. And I looked at some of the other charters, and there's more things listed under that they could be doing. I do think the position should be an elected position, and I think we need to talk about those other things before we say that, because again, that's based on, are we talking about a CPA? Are we talking about a firm or individual? And I think some of the other questions that are after this would help answer that question if they were identified on what we were actually looking for.
Do we already hire, we already hire an auditing firm for the city? There is a company audits the books.
Required.
Yeah,
That's a
so,
council
that's-
responsibility.
Yeah, and so effectively, we're debating whether to elect a person to do a job that we already hire
I
somebody
don't
to do.
think so,
No.
no.
No, don't
My
confuse the two.
understanding of the
Okay.
controller is it's the
Yeah.
day-to-day,
Yeah.
like they're
Okay.
writing a check to pay for X technology.
Okay,
And and is it appropriate based on the contract? Is it like the right amount of money? Is
Budget.
Is it
it,
budgeted? Is
What'd
it
you say?
budgeted?
okay.
Authority.
All right, I understand better then, okay.
okay,
Not a
So
business person.
It's very much internal control.
right.
Yeah.
Because it's like the auditors we hire, I think it's a legal requirement that we have a third party do that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
An independent audit is a post-audit position. You know, that is done after the end of the fiscal year. Then an accounting firm would come in and audit the books after the fact. And as Ms. Rufo indicated, the controller's responsibility as currently defined is a pre-audit responsibility, checks and balances, ensuring that any expenditures are consistent with the budgetary allotment that is established, issues like that.
I have a question. The code gives the controller subpoena power. What exactly does that mean, that they have subpoena power?
They can subpoena an individual relative to certain expenditures that may occur to validate the expenditure, the
City
necessity.
officials?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, it would be city officials.
okay.
And employees. And
Well,
employees.
yeah,
There's
employees,
vendors too.
Employees, city
yeah,
staff.
employees, yeah,
Vendors too, if you use.
yeah, conceivably vendors,
Yeah, it's product, yeah.
anyone that has,
Yeah, if they're, yes, have product.
if
Well,
it
and
bears
that
on
was my
expenditures of
question.
the city.
Right, if.
That's just my
there's a
question.
job-
Who can they subpoena? And if it's broad, then it's broad, but including city staff, city
Under their
officials?
authority,
Yes.
under the authority of the controller, as
Right.
they do their internal control, if there is a lack of information forthcoming, they can demand it.
Thank you.
And it would be by the city officials or however you perform, however you produce a subpoena under, okay. But technically,
So I
the
understand
controller
that
has
part.
subpoena power.
You have subpoena power, but you're gonna ultimately have to get that enforced by a court. There's a process, but yes, they have subpoena power.
Carl?
Yeah, so I'm indecisive at this, yeah, Carl, were you gonna say something?
I had more to
I mean,
kind of add along my line of thinking. I understand I'm a little outside the majority on this issue around appointment, which is that the controller elected independently, if they choose to, with their separate and independent elected kind of base of authority, obstruct the business of the city, they would have the right to do that. And in my opinion, that when they probably would have a lot of leeway to do that on their own accord, sometimes for petty reasons, and I don't think that that's a good thing. I think, I'm not, again, I'm actually very open-minded about this. I think it's more likely to happen if it's elected and less likely to happen if it's appointed. Because I think if it's an appointed position, there's no grandstanding for their own kind of personal electoral benefit. It's simply, I have the role that I was granted by the powers that put me in it. And, I'm either signing the check or I'm not, because the budget authority is there or it's not. And I guess we had a problem here in the city at one point in time where the controller would not sign something that we were rightfully entitled to spend the check on. And that's a problem, and we shouldn't have to endure that. So that's another reason I kind of.
Well, Carl, why would they have denied something that was rightfully,
Because they're petty.
and they're allowed to do that?
So the
Yes, they
authority-
are.
So the authority, I mean, is there a way to manage the authority so that, I mean, if it's a budgetary, I mean, if it's within the budgetary plan,
How was it resolved when it happened previously?
Yeah, that's what it
Both situations, one with the
That's-
treasurer, one with the
That's
controller.
what the
Well,
courts
that's
are
the way-
for.
Couldn't that happen
And-
anyways, even if
That-
the person,
could.
whether they're appointed or elected, they could still be quote petty?
I agree.
Mhm.
I just think that it's our job to look at the system and design a system that has incentives for good behavior. And I think we're less likely to encounter bad behavior if there are less incentives for it. And I think there's less incentives for it under an
If you're
appointed.
not elected.
That's my.
I mean,
There could be other ways
yeah, I mean,
to incentivize the position. I mean, I still have in the back of, no, not so far back in the back of my mind, but I have this thing about the city council getting this large amount of money back every year if they don't select the health insurance. 7 city council members times $25,000 or so.
$147,000
I
for
mean,
7 councils.
I think we could incentivize the payment to a controller, one way or another, whether it's elected or appointed. I think they should get paid what they're worth for what they're doing, to have the responsibility. If they're petty, there certainly should be means to withdraw them or remove them, however we write that.
and I also feel that the ethics board, like, that's something that could that board be used for something
I
just?
don't think it could.
The way I
Why
see
not?
it being set up, I don't see it like that neither.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't. I mean, this is going to be an elected or an appointed position, and I think that depends. Are we trying to make it a full-time position? Are we trying to say that we're going to appoint or elect a controller that's going to be responsible for what's in here? Because right now, that is not what is happening. And if that's the case, then, you know, if we're going to set those guidelines, then that's all the more reason why I would say an elected position, because now we're narrowing that down, the requirements, the workload, and everything else. So I think it
If
could
you-
be an elected position.
If we put in the charter that, like what it currently is outlined, even though you're saying that's not actually happening, that's what we want to happen, and we make the position more specific in terms of qualifications, Darlene, do you think the position should be full-time? Sorry.
Could we go to a decision on whether we want elected or appointed? Like I said, I'm
Not
very
if we
open
still
minded.
have discussion, not if we still all have
Are we talking about a
questions.
full-time or a part-time
I
person?
would say no.
I don't think it's a call for the question yet. I think it's still deliberation. And I don't know if that would be a full-time person. I'm just saying, to me, I know that the controller that we elected and have elected now is not doing what's on here and says on a third-class city, this is what a controller does. So if we're going to change those requirements, then we need to really think about that.
I want to, like, because I'm going to tie together, I think, three of you, all ideas. Like, you're talking about an expansion of powers. We're talking about how these people, the pay, like, where's the money coming from to pay these people? And then the concern of, like, who's influencing these things.
Accountability.
Yeah, like, I think this is why, I think the point about how do we have the ability to add powers or even make this a less important position.
Exactly.
And so we could utilize this position to, like, I think about, could this be an avenue for us to, like, have these public, more frequent public presentations on the budget, for example? Like, should the controller be in charge of that? But the way I see it, if we, for example, made it a prohibition that city councilors couldn't get the $21,000 if they declined health insurance, and let's just assume all 7 do, there's essentially a $140,000 as far as our elected officials go. That, not saying that we should definitely carry that forward, but there is money that technically, quote unquote, has been found. And so, yeah, I'm going to stop rambling there.
Can we come back to the question?
Well,
I don't
we need
think
to
we
decide the method of selecting a controller. I think that's current level. The powers and duties, we'll be discussing later. We have some input from the city on that. Won't be resolved tonight because that comes later. But it's a good discussion on the benefits of an elected versus appointed, because there's different responsibilities I'm hearing for each side. An appointed office is probably a full-time employee in my reckoning, which when you're looking at expenses becomes significant as far as manpower.
Right.
You're also going to be deciding on deputy controllers, and a controller has a staff. So as you work through that, that's the base question is elected or appointed.
And I want to just add on to Jerry's, one way to think about this in terms from a good government perspective, right, is the controller is basically your watchdog function in terms of council and the administration. So if you could, think about it as far as opposed to being sort of obstruction, as more of a watchdog, good government.
Over budget authorization.
Kind of.
Right, for budget authorization. We haven't heard from,
Serious question in response. Why do you say that an appointment would be a full-time position? Like, what's your thought process there?
it's an appointed officer, and I'm assuming you're going to create enough duties. As I was listening to the conversation,
Okay.
I was hearing a distinct difference between what duties you would like to see incorporated in the controller's office versus
You're
what an
incorporating
elected
our
person
policy.
could be trusted with, or
I just didn't track where I follow now.
I misinterpreted. If I did, let's talk it out. I'm assuming that's the discussion.
I'm just asking because that would determine my vote on whether it should be appointed or an elected. What duties are we assigning to the controller? and we're kind of saying appointed or elected now, then we're going to talk about what their duties are. I think it should be flipped. But to throw this out there, we do not even have to have a controller.
That's true.
So, I mean, we could eliminate the whole position and get a chief financial officer or something that incorporates everything. So we're talking about this, but, you know, I mean, it's not necessary that we have a controller. That position can be covered elsewhere in something by what I read.
Although we did decide to have a controller.
Oh.
The first decision you made was,
Right.
we will have a controller. So
Nothing's in stone, nothing's in stone.
everybody sort of nodded, and I saw a show of hands. So we did agree to a controller.
Yeah.
Now we're just discussing.
That's why we need the deliberation.
How would it be the people's choice or the people's representatives in the form of council or the mayor is where the people ultimately.
Would a controller, an elected controller, we said that if we had an appointed controller, then they would most likely have a controller's office with a deputy controller and staff. Would we not have the same thing if it was an elected controller? I mean, I think county government.
Necessarily.
The term I used the other day incorrectly, but now it did correctly. The prothonotary is elected, but the prothonotari's office doesn't change. It's still there. There's the support staff that does all the work.
Scranton has an elected controller, Scranton is home rule, and they have an elected full-time controller who has a deputy controller and there's 2 or 3 staff people.
And ethics responsibilities.
The ethics board in Scranton is appointed, from what I can recall,
The controller's on.
by the controller has an appointment.
Okay.
It's the appointments go to council, the mayor, and the controller for
Right.
the ethics board in Scranton.
I think the issue comes down to the responsibilities that you would give to the controller in terms of what type of staff they may need to fulfill those responsibilities. They may need staff, they may not need staff, depending upon what those responsibilities are.
And depending on them responsibilities, is it not something that somebody is already doing now? So that position would then be eliminated and it would be under the controller? Because I'm believing that those things are happening now. Whatever we say here is happening somewhere in the form of government, whether it's the audit or check-in, the watchdog approach, those things are happening. So, I mean, it's rumor like just shifting responsibilities to a different department or something.
So I don't think it is shifting responsibilities, and I think you said, well, we don't know that you don't think the current controller is doing it. I think the current controller is probably doing the very minimal things that are stated on the document now. And I'll just add that were this body to say, we think this should be an elected position, I would say in that case, I don't think that we should set qualifications that were more extraneous, or I don't know why I'm saying it that way, but if it's an election, let somebody run, and if they want to win it, people will vote for them, and I guess I wouldn't change it that much, honestly.
So isn't that the same as the way it's termed now, like loosely accountant is kind of what you're saying, or?
I mean, I don't like that, but I'm saying I'm copacetic with the way that it is now, though I think it could be better, that's all.
Okay.
It may be informative to the commission to hear from the city in terms of what they see the value of a controller, what some of the options may be with respect to that office and the responsibilities of that office in order to assist you in making a decision, whether it is elected, whether it's appointed, the type of responsibilities that should be vested in that office.
So when Carl and Tony, whoever was thinking about nominating or appointing, were you thinking about it as a full-time or a part-time position?
I still consider it would be a full-time position.
I consider it actually to be a part-time position appointed by the council as an extension of their authority to watch the finances of the administration.
Okay.
I was fine with either. My specific concern actually is like about more or less the qualifications. Like I really would love to see someone who's well-versed in finance and on a day-to-day basis doing that position.
Well, could we call on the mayor to provide her thought? I mean, she is here. Can we put you on the spot?
You're going to have some information from the business administrator next week. She's going to circulate it, so as far as I understand
Oh, is that part of the
No, that's the 23rd. That's
Oh, okay.
financial. This is part of our discussion of elected officials.
okay.
So
Go ahead.
wait, just hold off on it then.
So I think the person that's best suited to talk to you about where the value may or may not be in controller, roles of the controller, options for those, and there are multiple ones, as you've seen in the multiple charters that you've reviewed. My suggestion is to have Director Campbell work to provide some of that to you. One suggestion I would make is that she do so by at the budget committee meetings over the next meeting or so, not for the purpose necessarily of the committee making a recommendation, but for the committee bringing back options to this commission to discuss that are a little bit more detailed rather than we're here right now, because we're getting a little bit caught in some of the generalities where they're not matching with specifics. So that's just one way of doing it, rather than an open discussion here, which would allow Ms. Campbell to give thought to the various options for the committee to discuss them, to be able to lay out pluses and minuses of each, and then to bring them back in a more vetted manner for the entire body.
I like that idea.
It's going to be.
So I feel like
They're not meeting for a while.
we don't know exactly how the city uses this role.
Right.
I mean, we're all making assumptions. I mean, some of us are more knowledgeable about it than some of the rest of us, perhaps. But I could think about how I would use a controller within my business, but that might be very different from how the city uses it and how, and I think, what we were talking about just in terms of good governance, like what the role of that plays within how we're managing the finances, but I don't even know in practical terms how that all works.
Yeah.
So I think having somebody that has some practical knowledge would be helpful for us.
And I think just one more thing, all of the questions that we submitted to the city months ago to ask questions, we might thought to return back to that, to maybe remind ourselves of what was already said related to the value or what is going on with the position
We
now.
have differing viewpoints of that from different staffers.
Yeah.
So something's the table?
I will agree that a year ago, I didn't know what a controller was. So to decide it, but through the education process, a better, but I'm sure very, very shallow level of understanding of the position. I do think we should make a decision, though, about the elected or appointed. I think that's a foundational issue. And again, make the decision. We can address this, and then the details can come out when Director Campbell meets with the Budget and Finance Committee.
So so Darlene, it sounds like you're concerned, and I share that concern, that it's like, well, it's gonna make a difference in terms of what the role is, but I guess to flip it the other way, does it really need to make a difference? Is the expectations of the role, fundamentally, the role is the role. And so if we have thoughts around what we want that role to be, and maybe those thoughts aren't fully formed, and we'll get more information from Tina when she comes, but fundamentally, understanding what the role is to be, okay, we have that foundation of things, and then can think about whether an elected or an appointed position would be. I understand, Brian, you're trying to move this forward. I get the reasoning behind that, but it's like, if we have the ability to craft this the way that we want, we can craft the role into that position.
Can you say what you've been trying to say, Darlene?
I think I said what I really think. I think I already said it.
Just that you think we should wait.
Yeah, I just really think, we all we said we need more information, so I think asking us to decide elected or appointed at this time, I don't think it's gonna matter. Once the role's defined and we know what the city's, saying about the role, I think that decision's gonna come back easy to us. This is the role, this is what it is. Do we wanna elect them or appoint them? I think we're trying to do it in reverse. I think that's gonna happen rather easy once we get that information.
We could
Well,
either, I'm sorry, Ms. Cook.
I was just going to say, for the sake of, I think we can resolve this coming back to it once it's written, since that's always been what you're saying. I needed more information at this time to better understand other points of view, which has always been my concern, to hear what everyone is saying, and where everyone is coming from. So I would resolve to, one of these decisions, knowing that we'll come back to it anyway.
And that was what I was going to say as well. I think, it's not critical to have a decision on that, whether it's appointed or elected. At this point, until you have that additional information, we can move forward on other related issues here and make that determination then after you have input from Director Campbell and the Budget and Finance Committee.
Thank you.
I would just like to say, even though maybe we feel like we're not moving forward, we are, because we're having conversations,
Yeah.
and that's important.
It has been important.
Yes, that is important, definitely.
We know that we don't know what we want to do, and we need more.
Next.
I would still like to make the decision. Yeah, like I said, we can always change our mind.
I mean,
You're not running this part of the meeting.
I know, I'm just,
This is the committee of the whole, so we have.
we already,
Jerry,
I'm one of the whole, so I can.
Thank you for your
the thing is,
opinions
we
on
already
that, Frank.
made a decision. We already said we were gonna elect them, so we can come back to it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize we had.
We already said
You
we're
said
gonna
you have a
have
control.
one.
No, we said we're going to have one. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you made a major,
Right. Yeah, wait.
you made a major decision.
Not the other one.
I was going to say something happened.
When did that happen, right?
So we
Yeah,
can-
I don't think we need to do this, make that decision.
If the commission is uncomfortable with the level of familiarity, there'll be ample opportunity to quiz the administration, the business administrator, and we can provide you with samples, language from other charters, how they treat this different position, and we can move on to another elected official.
Okay,
Yes?
Sounds good.
Yep.
let's take a vote on it.
All right. Well,
Good, we don't need to.
is that okay?
Yeah.
That is okay.
All right, I didn't ask for a show of hands, I just assumed. Okay.
Okay with everybody except Ryan.
I want to make the decision, but I'm a majority of one here, so, yes,
Decision's a decision.
a decision is a decision,
That's still a decision.
absolutely.
Okay, the second elected position on the agenda was the treasurer's office. The treasurer's office is a third-class city code position. I like to think of the treasurer as the main tax collector, but the code has qualifications, and the code has some specificity to it. Number one, they must be an accountant, similar to the controller. They must be at least 21 years of age. They must be a resident of the city for at least 1 year before the election. They must reside in the city throughout their term of office. The individual must be a qualified tax collector, or in the case of an individual appointed to fill a vacancy in the office of the treasurer, become a qualified tax collector. Pennsylvania had a law passed that actually qualifies tax collectors.
There's a qualification test that is taken, and they're listed on the DCED website.
What website?
The qualification to be a tax collector, DCED, on the,
Thank you.
there's a tax collector manual, I believe, on there. There's a series of education responsibilities and things.
Correct. Yeah, that was changed. There was legislation approximately 15 years or so ago that now requires that qualification for the tax collector.
And the individual must be able to be bonded to provide to the city a lawful fidelity bond covering the full term of the office for the performance of their official duties, including duties as tax collector, county institution, district, and school taxes. That bond is usually in at least the amount of taxes accrued, the taxes levied. The city code has duties for the for the treasurer. The city treasurer is to be the tax collector for the city. Once you're the city treasurer, you are the tax collector for the city, the county, the school district, and any institution district taxes that are levied. The tax collector maintains and keeps an office, and the tax collector's hours can be the same as the city treasurer's hours. The accounts of the city treasurer shall clearly exhibit all the items of receipts and expenditures of the city from the sources from which the money is received and the objects for which the expenditures are dispersed. The city treasurer shall keep separate and distinct accounts of the receipts and expenditures of the city, including any sinking funds, each department providing utility service, and each special fund. The city treasurer shall keep public funds in banks or financial depositories as directed by council and under the restrictions and safeguards provided by council. The city treasurer shall verify the city treasurer's accounts as requested by the city council. City treasurer shall perform such functions and duties and have such powers relating to the collection, receiving, safekeeping, and payment over of public monies, including city, county, institution, and school district taxes. What's good?
Yeah, if I can just add to that, some of the responsibilities of the treasurer were altered by Act 32, which consolidated the earned income tax collection system across the Commonwealth. And in Lancaster, there is a Lancaster County Tax Office that you're probably familiar with, but they have the responsibility of collecting the earned income tax under Act 32. So that was a change in responsibilities for the treasurer because of Act 32.
So the treasurer is collecting which taxes?
The earned in, currently, the property tax, the real estate tax.
But the way that we're functioning now, does not our treasurer sign over those responsibilities to the city?
It's our understanding that there is an agreement between the administration and the treasurer to have the administration, director of administration's office administer the responsibilities of the treasurer's office.
Yeah, I was just reviewing the treasurer's answers to our questions, which actually were kind of confusing because it seemed like the answers were the same as the controllers. It's a little, unless I'm looking at the wrong document, but it seemed like some of the answers were exactly the same as the controller, so it was confusing.
And I mean, I think that's because that's the role that they play. It wasn't necessarily the description of what they're to do. It's just the same because of what it is they're doing. They're both part-time positions. I don't even think, is it $8,000 or $5,000 that they're, $8,000 that they get, you know, and both of them are part-time positions. So
what do you think? Should there be a treasurer?
It functioning as we have now?
No, just moving forward, what do you think we should we have?
I mean, I think that this is the crux of a lot of this, is
Both
that,
of these positions.
so just because that's the way they're functioning now,
right?
You know, I think we're trying to create a system for how the city is going to function in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, at face, I think the two independent offices of a treasurer and a controller, to me, seem to make a lot of sense. Somebody that's responsible for the bringing in of money, which is what the treasurer seems to be doing, and somebody that's responsible for the outgoing
as
of
watchdogs
and looking over that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that seems, you know, and we're in the position of having this conversation, you know, in a proactive way, right? So other communities have done this in a reactive way after there's been situations and some malfeasance occurring. And so I think being clear-eyed about what's our intention of how we want government to run, and what are the ideal, I mean, so all of what we're doing should be aspirational, right? What's the best way that we can set a system in place for our government to run? And I think we have to be thinking of it in those kinds of terms. I mean, balanced with kind of the reality of how it works now, because we don't know 100% how it works. But just understanding that and trying to figure out like what's the best process and system that we can set up so that, this can run for 50 to 100 years from now.
Right.
Mr. Feldman, Mr. Barber, many charters that we reviewed for both the term limits and this controller treasurers, many of them have eliminated. The treasurer kept the controller. The most recent charter was the city of Pittston kept the treasurer as their tax collector because in home rule municipalities, they can assign the collection of taxes to a third party. In the city of Pittston, they kept their treasurer specifically as their tax collector. But the majority of charters we reviewed that have an elected treasurer, they're city charters, obviously, had done away with it. But Mr. Feldman, just as a point of information.
Okay, thank you.
I have a very open mind about what the controller's role could become. I don't really feel the same about the treasurer. I think that the office of the city treasurer is a complete and total anachronism that is no longer necessary. It serves the function of collecting only the taxes, which are property taxes. Thank you.
Just one.
Which are signed over to the city's business administrator, and I cannot see any feasible way in which this independently elected office could do a better job of the management of that function than the city's business administrative unit. And if you read the responses from people who we asked, what is duplicative and unnecessary? The one thing that was consistent was the office of the city treasurer.
I think if they're gonna be looking at a watchdog, money coming in and money going out, yes. If we're looking at this where they're gonna have control over the city taxes and collecting, I think, again, we're looking at then more money, because I think that person needs more of a full-time job, not just a watching over to see what's done. So, I'm kind of like agreeing with Pete.
Then I'll jump in, and I agree with Mr. Feldman. There is rarely the problem, or let's put it this way: municipalities suffer from the problem of too much money going out. They never seem to suffer from the problem with somebody not allowing the money to come in. So I'm not overly concerned that not having a treasurer would suddenly make tax collecting more difficult or less difficult. I don't think it would matter one way or another. I agree. I like the term. It's an anachronism. I will say, just sort of for a comparison purpose, what's the population of Pittston?
9,000, 10,000?
Okay. I actually already knew that. I just wanted to make sure that was.
It's close to it, right?
I thought it was like 8,500,
Well,
but yeah, but I remember whatever you read.
It's not as big.
We're talking a large borough.
It is a large borough.
Not a
Small
city, or which could potentially be a larger city. So I understand what Pittston did. They need somebody to handle the taxes coming in from 3,500 or 4,000 people, 8,000 residents, and that's a little different than handling it for 56 to 60,000. I don't see the point of the treasurer's office. Reviewing the questions, as had been mentioned before, I kind of got the impression the treasurer himself had difficulty justifying being the treasurer. So.
And I'll just say, one of the things I liked about the treasurer position, it is a contact person for the people. Some of the changes that were made at the treasurer's office, since the new treasurer was there was a time that they wouldn't accept pennies. Well, if people are paying you, regardless how you're paying you, and until that issue was raised, it was not addressed. And I know because we have a lot of people that address issues, or the fact that a lot of times if you call the treasurer's office, the line is busy and the answer machine is always busy. So usually a call to the treasurer they put a call into the city, next thing you know, you can get a call in, whether you're asking about a bill or you're asking about something. So I think they serve as a connection between the people and the office and how they function, as well as seeing how the funds go. And I think people need that, because, you know, you keep calling and calling. And I know of a couple cases where issues had to be resolved at the treasurer's office, and the treasurer was the contact person to get that done.
Can I make a point about that?
Sure.
I don't doubt that that occurred, definitely. But I think what's going on there is misleading people as to what is actually the problem. If you have a problem right now with the treasurer's office, the person you need to say, like, I'm going to take my vote and be mad about it is not the treasurer. It's the mayor. You know, and so I just think if we continue to keep that system of two necks to strangle, so to speak, it's just, it's like that is, I don't think that is a good system of democratic accountability.
I agree. I can agree with that.
I mean, I agree with that as well.
All of that to say, yes.
There has been an agreement for a number of
Call the
years,
mayor.
for a number of years, relative to those responsibilities being given to the Director of Administration's office. You know, from our understanding, that process seems to work well. If the treasurer is collecting taxes, but you have other revenues coming in, water, sewer, et cetera, those are being paid to the administration, to the Director of Administration's office. So, you know, you don't want to, it doesn't make a lot of sense to segregate those responsibilities, vest them all in one office. And that is a process that seems to be working fairly well in the city right now.
That seems like a process that would streamline things, I think, is what it
Yeah.
sounds like to me.
Yes.
Because he's not doing the collective
Well, is there a consensus on
taxes.
on this?
Let's ask the question.
Yeah.
Should there be a treasurer's position? Should there be a treasurer's position? A show of hands, please. Yes?
Yes.
For yes,
yes.
yes, there should be a treasurer. No, there should not be a treasurer. 8 hands. Okay, thank you very much.
I've got to answer those questions.
Okay, the next elected position that we're going to address is the mayor. Currently, the mayor's responsibilities, she is the chief executive officer of the city, responsible for day-to-day operation, responsible for the appointment of department heads, significant administrative responsibilities are vested in that office. To start with, we should determine whether there should be a minimum age for the position, and if so, what that minimum age should be. Currently, an individual must be at least 18 years of age and a resident of the city for not less than 1 year before the date of, and present a signed affidavit certifying that. The mayor must also reside in the city for the entire term of office. So with that, I'll open the discussion as to a minimum age.
Yes.
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 And
what should that minimum age be? It does not have to be the same as
You
council.
want to go down the list of the
It can
names?
be,
so we
but
can
it
say?
does not need to be.
I was gonna say, but you said it's 18 now?
Well, it's council, you've decided council is 18. The mayor is a separate elected official, does not have to be the same as council.
But we are saying there should be a minimum
I'm gonna
age.
say-
You all said there should be a minimum
No.
age.
I-
Oh, okay.
I
I thought,
said
I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
misunderstood. I thought there was
Yeah, we did.
consensus.
Sorry,
on-
yeah, I was saying no because I started getting triggered about the whole like age
I
of
know.
council. Like as
He did say that.
as the youngest person who ever ran for mayor, to my knowledge, I think it's a big mistake to let 18-year-olds run for mayor, and it does need to be higher. Frankly, the lowest I feel comfortable saying is 25, and even on that end, I don't know that I even feel comfortable with that, because there are a lot of extraneous social pressures that come, especially when you're a young person in a new environment, breaking out, I guess, if you will. And I, as much as I do value that experience, and frankly, it's why I'm with you all now, I do not wish some of the experiences I've had on another young person.
Then they shouldn't do it.
That, right.
They shouldn't do it, but I think it would be
And then
more
we
wise to
shouldn't
take that
elect
option
them,
away.
but they
Well,
should have the option to
What-
run because they can vote.
What has been the youngest, this is a off the wall question, but like what has been the youngest mayor that we've had elected? Does anybody,
In the city?
in this city in Lancaster?
No.
Just out of curiosity.
They haven't been young.
Mayor Morris?
He was pretty young.
And
He was
How
like
old?
I think it just boils
38.
down to,
He was
are we
appointed
gonna
38
disenfranchise
or-
people within,
Right. And I said
and
no.
I agree, I mean,
He's in his 30s.
Sorry, Mr. Barber has the
yeah,
floor.
no, I just think, Tony, I appreciate everything that you're saying, but it's like, I think the voters have to make a decision.
Yep.
And we
Yeah.
shouldn't disenfranchise somebody from the opportunity to vote.
We're not disenfranchising, sorry, sorry.
Well,
I do hear what you're saying 100%, but I think it's more wise for a young person to get engaged on the council level. And I'm not saying that young people shouldn't run, but like there should be at least a certain level of appropriate age gap. Because I was really hot-headed when I did it. I was like, I'm mad about the federal
That's
government and everything. Like, let's just go.
That's
And
you.
you got elected, I mean,
Right.
that's the point,
Yeah.
I mean,
But you
I mean,
should have had the
I'm not trying to
opportunity
be
to
flip about
run.
it, but it's like the population will make that determination.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't
I
think that,
agree.
I mean, it was a valuable experience for you to learn from, and
Yep.
if people want to have that experience, let them run for office. I mean, we have a voting age, and
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, people.
I would,
Yeah.
Go ahead,
I
Maxine.
would like to say, to your point, Peter, I don't think we're disenfranchising anyone. I feel like we're just making an age limit for them to be able to do it. I don't feel like we're disenfranchising them. I don't think, and I wouldn't be confident in an 18-year-old running my city.
I wouldn't either.
Yeah,
I
so,
Then you
and I'm just saying,
No,
right, exactly.
yeah.
To give them the opportunity. I just think it's not disenfranchising anyone. I just think the age limit is the age limit. Are we disenfranchising students to get kids to get their driver's license? Because we have an age limit there? I don't think so. I think it's a certain age that they just need to wait for. I think of it in that.
I agree with Mr. Dasher. There are certain jobs, elected positions, that experience really does mean everything.
Yeah, but the voters.
Experience has a calming effect.
Democracy.
Uh,
Voters
And,
decide.
and unless, I heard a comment was told once, unless somebody dies, it can always be fixed. Any problem can be fixed. In this case, my analogy was meant to be, we can say, well, I do not want an 18-year-old running for office, and I want them, personally, I would go with 30 or 35, but then again, I'm a little older. That 18-year-old, unless something happens to him, is not stopping them from running at 30. They can still run. I'm just saying, sit and watch for a little bit and see what's going on. I'm very nervous about, I think absolutely, I defer to the voters that they get to decide, but it really scares me that an 18-year-old could be running the city, or a 20-year-old, or a.
Honestly, I agree with you about, 30, 35 is frankly where I feel more appropriate with the age limit. I know, right?
Wow.
I do hear what you're saying about let the voters decide, but I actually want to circle this back to say it can always be fixed unless someone dies. And letting an 18-year-old run for mayor I'm talking about mental health here. I'm talking about the dynamics of how you turn hopefuls into fools in the eyes of the voters by letting an 18-year-old. I'm only speaking from the feedback I get from people, good and bad. And on the bad side, I really don't know that someone who's that young is equipped for that level of social interaction where people are looking at you to be the chief executive of a city and they're like, what do you know, little boy?
They're equipped to go to war.
Yeah.
They're equipped,
Well, that's a
equipped to
problem
vote.
too.
They can vote for you if you're
That's a problem,
35, but they're 18, but they can't vote for themselves.
I feel like you're overly personalizing
Yeah.
this.
No, it's definitely, I don't disagree. It is
I
personal
appreciate
for
the
me.
perspective.
Yeah.
I do too. I definitely appreciate your perspective. I definitely feel that it should still be up to the people.
Yep.
Definitely.
Okay.
We have limits on Congress. We have an age limit on Congress. We have an age limit on the Senate. We have an age limit on the president. Personally, I think the mayor of a third-class city is a far, far more difficult job than being a United States senator. And if the Constitution decided you have to be, I think it's 30, to be a United States senator, and that job is easy compared to being a mayor of any city. I would say the history already shows that we need an age limit. It's a job that requires experience. I always joke that until you've calmed a 5-year-old who's crying because their best friend called him a name, you just don't know what life is about. You need life experience. We have year after year, every 4 years, we have a 35, 36, 37-year-old running for president. And quite often, I look at the person, I say, this guy will make a great president 30 years from now. But I do not want a 38-year-old running the country today. I'd like to see him when he's 58 or 68, and I think he'll be wonderful.
I think that's 8, yeah, that's like.
Obama was 57, not 57.
What's that?
Obama, Barack Obama. He was born in, well,
He was in his
40. He was 47.
Yeah.
He and I are the same age. That's all I know. In 2008, he was 40. So we.
Yeah, Fred was looking it up. House of Representatives is 25, Senate is 30, President is 35, Constitution of Pennsylvania to be governor is 30. So.
21 for state
And we're not
house and 25 for state
disenfranchising any of them.
Senate, right. Pardon me?
We're not disenfranchising any of them. They just have to wait till it's their turn.
Yeah, we're not. And the reality is anybody can, disenfranchising implies we're taking somebody's vote away from them. We're not taking the vote. We're saying who qualifies. We've already decided, well, we haven't decided, but we've already discussed the idea that I can never be the controller of the city. Mostly because I am not an accountant and I have absolutely no interest in being an accountant, and the idea of being an accountant terrifies me. So it's a good thing that they have told me that I cannot be the controller. That doesn't take away the vote from anybody.
Okay, so I'm getting a little lost there. We agree there's a minimum age,
18.
We agree.
and
On that.
let's float the 18 trial balloon. Who is in favor of an 18-year-old minimum wage, minimum age? Minimum wage. I have 5, so for the record, how many would like it higher?
Be higher.
Okay, 3, 2, all right.
But higher, we're not saying
5
what.
to 3.
Well, more than 18.
We're saying higher, but we're not identifying
Right,
that
more than
number.
18. Right,
Well, we could,
More than 18.
more than 18.
Okay, so the consensus is 18.
We've lost.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next question, residency. Currently, the mayor is to provide a signed affidavit to the city clerk that states the person, as mayor, resides in the city from which elected and has resided in the city continuously for at least 1 year preceding the person's election. The mayor would forfeit office if they move from the city during their term. I know in the deliberations of council, you established a 2-year residency requirement. Do you want the same for the mayor, or do you want another requirement?
I'll put 1 year.
I want the same.
I didn't really like the council one, but I'll stick with it.
Just,
I would like to raise it.
I'd
I'd like to raise it.
I'd raise it to 4 years.
I was going to say 5 years, but I'd be willing to go down to 4.
Four sits it with 2 cycles of council,
That's
or
true.
1 elected, and there's a connection that I want somebody who's been living in the city, watching what's going on,
Exactly.
That has
not I'm always worried about somebody who's just picking a place, lives in Providence, who says, you know, I'd like to be the mayor. So I'm going to buy a house and move into the city and next November run for mayor. That bothers me.
Yeah.
I think 2 years gives you, I mean,
2 years is fine. I would prefer 4, but 2 years
if you're
is
that
fine.
committed to, in your scenario, if you're that
Yeah.
committed to wanting to do that, I think.
Oh, yeah.
2 years is plenty of time.
Well, like I said,
That's just what I think.
we see it at the federal level, we see
Yeah.
this kind of thing happening all the time now.
Yeah.
It's become a very common one to move from New Jersey to Pennsylvania and then run for the Senate, or
Yeah.
move from Connecticut.
All the time they
They
do.
do it
Yeah.
all the time.
And it's different, I get that, but like I said, I think a legitimate residency requirement is necessary. And like I said, I'm fine with 2 years. I would prefer 4, but I'm fine with 2.
I was gonna say 3, but I'll go 4. I was gonna say 3, but I'll go 4. I think 2 is not enough to get to know the city and be able to come up with some solutions, because most of the time when a mayor's running for a position, they're running on issues, and to know those issues and be able to address them. And not say, oh, well, we'll do it like they do in California, because I live in California and I just moved here. Well, Lancaster's not California, so.
I just want to point out that I'm fine with the 2-year thing. We're talking about residency 2 years, and everyone's like talking, I think they have in their mind the idea of somebody coming from somewhere far away. When this happens, it's probably someone who lived in Lancaster Township. And I am fine saying the person who lived in Lancaster Township didn't live in the city, even though the city line is the street they live on. But I just think if you think about the most realistic scenario where this is going to happen, that's what it's going to be. And it'll be a little funny when it's like, well, you didn't live in the city, and it's like literally across the street.
However, we won't really know. This could be, anybody could just come from anywhere. I mean, we don't know. It's possible. And I think for me, I agree with you, and I would just like to see, I mean, 4 years, definitely is the time for that person to really participate, dive in, and know their city.
Right, so the minimum age in council is 20.
Sorry.
No.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're in a much more transient society than we were,
Yeah.
50 years ago.
Which is not.
And, the average length of stay in a house is less than 7 years. And, so where you move, what's going, I don't know, for you, I think 2 years.
Well, if you want to be the mayor.
You gotta stay a little longer.
You gotta stick it out.
Let's,
Gotta stick it out in the.
see if we have a consensus then. Let's start with 2 years.
Show of hands for 2
Show,
years.
yes. Okay, we have 3. 3 years. 4 years. 4 or 5. Okay, so 4 years it is.
4 years.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I will add, I don't think, in my memory, there has ever been a mayor, well, I do remember Mayor Morris, but, so, and I don't know how long he lived here, who lived in the city for less than decades. So I'm not overly concerned about it, but yes.
You do have to get people to vote for you, so if you
Yep.
don't know who you are, that's.
Yeah.
Okay, vacancy. The legislative body fills the appointment of a permanent vacancy for mayor. What is the length of term that the new appointee will serve? Currently, council fills the vacancy within 30 days to serve until the next municipal election that occurs at least 200 days after the vacancy. The person elected at the next municipal election then serves from January following the election for the remainder of the original term. If the vacancy is not filled in 30 days, the Court of Common Pleas, upon petition of 10 or more qualified electors, fills the vacancy for the portion of the unexpired term. Now, whenever we discussed this matter with council, the consensus was to expand the length of time for consideration by council to 45 days. So the question at this point is, should we maintain the 30? Should we go with 45 days to allow for a broader and more lengthy time period.
Questions?
What happens if there's a vacancy now? Who does the president
Council
of council
fills.
Council.
takes over?
No,
Just the entire
no.
council?
The council
No,
appoints.
the council appoints somebody as executive?
And I'm just remembering when Mayor Gray had his motorcycle accident, and the talk was about who would have became the mayor if something would have happened. And I think then they were talking about the director of economic development would have became, I think it was, I can't even think right now.
Randy Patterson.
Randy Patterson would have became the mayor until, I guess, council would have had their time to appoint someone. So what would happen in a
Many
situation?
charters require the mayor to designate a deputy mayor in the event of a short-term absence or declared absence by the mayor, basically a voluntary giving up of power to a deputy mayor, but it's a designee, it's a mayor designee, and they usually have to do that within so many days of being sworn in. So it's known, and that designee is subjected to the short term that you decide to replace them by the council. So they could not serve for longer than, say, 30 days or 40 days or,
Whatever
you know.
we said.
Yeah, when the replacement is appointed, that's when the designee no longer is the mayor.
And the designee would have to meet these same qualifications, like living in the city.
Well, that would be part of the charter, yeah, we'd have to write that into the article.
Well, I'm just saying, 4 years, yeah.
Could really screw us up.
Designee.
Yeah, who's been here for 4 years now?
I got a
But-
question about electoral procedure, actually. So, like, let's say hypothetically we said there should be special elections, like, as soon as possible. And so the vacancy were to open up in January. So the next election wouldn't be a general, but a primary election. Can we hold special elections during primary elections?
Yeah, I believe you can. It's a question of whether the county would
We can.
allow it. You'd have to,
You're allowed to.
we'd have to require that at the next election, a special election.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know the answer as to
Yeah.
what the county board of elections requirements would be and the county's requirements in terms of cost, so I can't answer that, but. I mean,
Some counties require the reimbursement of the costs.
Correct.
So I'm just spitballing here. The controller, who may or may not be elected or appointed, should temporarily fill the role of the mayor since they oversee the day-to-day
That's a
operations.
whole, that's.
Yeah,
a whole other
that, we'll discuss that as part of the article, when we draft the
okay.
article. Right now, we're doing our building block thing, okay? So,
Yeah, I jumped the
Right
block
now,
too high.
yeah, but the fall is farther. You know, we gotta build it up, so we have a stable base.
In the current law, I don't understand the 200 days after vacancy incurs.
The,
What is
I
that?
think it's so that if something happens to them, not just you explain.
Well, it's about the timing for the
Time of the
election.
election.
It's the timing of
If
the election.
somebody like, if the mayor can't, like the day before the election, if something happens to the mayor,
Yeah, you wouldn't want to appoint somebody to serve for 4 days
then the next.
until the following Tuesday.
Yeah, because you're saying the next election, there's gonna be election for, you have an interim appointed mayor, and then the next election, the next municipal election, someone's gonna run for that. Could be the person appointed, or could be totally different, but you need that time to prepare the election material. So I think the statute is 200 days is enough time to give county, the nomination, everybody to gear up for the
Determine
next
who's
election.
going to run for mayor.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so you'll get at least 200 days out of the appointed mayor.
And it takes them 2 days to get audio-visual stuff together. I mean, imagine that.
Oh,
Yeah.
So the question here is,
I'm fine with,
whoa.
Amy, I'm sorry.
I'm fine with the way the current law is written and changing it to match council with the
Yes.
45 days.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I agree.
Yes.
So the same for the mayor, Fred? You called the question?
same, right.
So.
So there's agreement.
All the same for the mayor?
Yeah.
As for council?
Yep.
Nobody, I don't see any dissenters, do I have?
I'm only saying no because
Why are you saying no?
I have other ideas, but we don't have to hash them out, and so that's why I'm going to say no.
So I had 2 no's or 1?
Well, I'm only one person.
Okay. I was trying to count.
Who said no?
No, I'm saying yes.
Oh, you're a yes, okay.
I thought you were gonna ask us again.
Okay, we'll move on then.
What do you?
And we talked again at the last week relative to some qualifications dealing with incapacitation and permanent vacancy. If you remember that, you basically indicated that the court would need to declare the individual incapacitated under a guardianship of some sort. Is that the same for the mayor? Would you want to maintain that, or do you want something different?
I think it should be the same.
Yeah,
I agree,
What was the
yes.
question? I couldn't.
it was about how to fill the vacancy if the council cannot agree.
Oh,
Or removal, right? Removal was the other thing you were
Well,
asking.
that was when, if the court
Yeah, you
had
have to
declared
be-
somebody incompetent, or there was a permanent vacancy of the mayor's office, or incapacitated,
Should it match the council procedure?
should it match the council? Because you decided that if an outside entity declared somebody to be incapable of doing normal functions, then they can also be declared incapable of being a council person. So we're saying, is that the same you want for the mayor? Same high bar? for the mayor?
Yes.
so it wasn't that council would vote a council member at all? It was a
it's
a
not-
private
yeah,
entity? Okay, because the
Yeah.
way I got that information was like,
No one ever said the council would have the ability to remove another
Yeah.
council member.
No,
That
no.
isn't,
Yeah.
that
that's how I
wanted-
received it,
None of
but
us
yes.
wanted that.
Okay.
isn't, but yeah, there's,
Okay.
you can, everyone is equally represented
Yes,
by their
I didn't think that would be
constituencies.
legal.
Nobody has power to remove any
Right,
council
I
person.
didn't think it was.
However, if, as we talked about last time, a family has a situation where someone is declared incompetent
Mhm.
or incapacitated,
Counts.
and for reasons of law, they go to court to be declared incapable, incompetent of their own affairs,
Mhm.
that would be grounds for the council to say an independent body, the court, and maybe the family, is removing this person from control of their own affairs, therefore they should not be in control of the affairs of the elected.
Yes.
So you then say, we will
That's
follow
what saves us.
the rule of the court, and we will declare it vacant.
Right.
Okay? It isn't, you didn't look at me at the party, so I want to declare your seat vacant.
That's
It
what
is
we're doing.
total
Okay.
big process.
Yeah.
That's how I got that.
Someone other than
It's an
council
independent-
first saying,
Yeah, non-city, it's a non-city
and
entity.
then council just following up on that, not council throwing the person
Right.
off.
Once that decision is made, then it reverts back to the vacancy process.
Right, yeah,
Then it's just a vacancy.
right.
But somebody has to legally declare
Yeah.
them incapacitated.
Somebody-
Court does that.
Right,
Somebody-
exactly. A judge does that.
I
A
got it.
judge has to do that.
And that's a hearing and
That's a hearing,
evidence and.
court of common
Yeah,
pleas,
it's-
judge
I'm
saying
glad
you're
Is
it
Orphans
incompetent.
Court there? Is Orphans Court a family court?
That's off my list.
Yeah, it's the county court does it.
Yeah,
It's not something people take lightly.
right.
So it's a very hard bar. Britney Spears, right, conservatorship.
Spears.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so
I see it on my job.
That
took me a
Those dots.
Okay.
That's not accurate, right, John? She was conservative. She was a conservative, it's not a capacity.
So you was okay with that?
All right, that takes us to term limits. And the question is, should the number of consecutive terms that a mayor can serve be limited? If so, what should that limit be? And secondly, should the number of total terms, they're not necessarily consecutive, but total terms also be limited? So there currently are no limitations in the third-class city code, optional Plan A that you're operating under. There are term limits for various offices that are provided for in different charters. We did provide you with a listing that was distributed to the entire commission that shows some of the limitations that currently exist.
You got it.
Let me see.
Oh,
Everybody had a chance to see that?
yeah, I did get it somewhere.
Well, I will start. My opinion on term limits for any position is that every elected position already has term limits. You are not allowed to serve one day past what the voters want you to serve. And anything else is getting back to we're taking the will of the voter away from them by saying this person can no longer be the job. If they want a mayor to serve for 25 years, well, who am I to question the voter. So,
I'd like to say that I agree. We didn't see for term limits for council people, and I don't see why the mayor should be under an unfair disadvantage in being able to face the voters and continue to make their case, whether they should continue in that office.
We can always come back to that.
Oh, okay, because I thought we did. I'm going to say, I know, I thought the council's term should have been 2 years. So I think if their terms were 2 year, I would have said no limitations. But because it's 4 years, I think they should, it should be two terms. You could run for 2 terms, which would be 8 years. Yes.
No, yeah, I gotta agree with Brian and Carl on this one. No term limits, and like I always bring them up, like to talk about how things grow. Bernie Sanders was a 4-term mayor, and then he ended up being arguably the most successful, nearly independent run for president in modern history. And that's a point of contention. I don't like that he ran through the party system, but you know, we saw what was a turning point for the whole country, essentially, in a political movement, come from a guy who had 4 terms as mayor in a city in Vermont. So I think it's important that we don't term limit the mayor as well.
Mayor of Harrisburg had 6 consecutive terms.
Yes, it did.
I was going to say, and that was a problem, though.
Right. People kept voting them in.
Remember,
Yeah,
the mayor, and I'm not advocating either one, I'm just providing some background.
Context.
The mayor is fundamentally a different position
Yeah.
than a 6 council, or 7 council, rather. The mayor is the executive of the city.
I thought we currently had 3-year, they could only run for 3 years.
No.
3
3
terms,
terms, no.
right?
There's no
There's
limitation.
no
There's
limits.
No limit?
No, not on third-class city code, no.
I like the idea of 3-term max.
That's 12 years, right.
Yes, yeah.
Any other discussion? I heard 3 years, 3 terms. I heard no terms, no limit.
Well, when we talked about some of this at the last meeting, and you did the research and provided the information, it was interesting to see how many of the home rule study municipalities do have 2 consecutive 4-year terms as a limitation. There's only 2 that have 3-year terms, 3 consecutive terms, and I forgot which one did not have. I think there was only 1 that did not have any limitations, so.
Right, there's only 1 that did not have any limits.
What do you mean?
That went home rule? I wanted,
No, there's, most of the charters do not have term limits, but rather than me go through how many there are in the state.
No, I'm saying the ones that you gave me.
The one I gave you is based on the
you're looking at the denominator,
Yeah,
not the numerator.
What does that mean?
So-
I'm
Yeah.
saying I said, by my count, there's at least 13,
Yeah,
because when the state published the last set of statistics, it said there was 10. I know of 3 more that were added since then.
hold on.
So I included them in here. And just as a point of information, the thing I sent you had the bottom one missing. So there's an Upper Providence Township also. But I went through the charters for those 13 looking for representative. I ignored some of the townships. They were duplicative of the other townships. So of a universe of 13, there's how many here? I forget.
10.
10. So I think it was at West, I didn't look at the White Marsh Township, Murraysville. You'll also notice that the voters added term limits by referendum later on in Monroeville and Ferguson Township up in Center County.
So
that was
what-
the reason for that.
Yeah, so providing this information and seeing that there are term limits listed here, and this is comparable to, these are municipalities comparable to this,
I tried to get them that were comparable in, actually, it's a mix of more recent, the 3 more recent ones, which would have been Luzerne, Nanticoke, and Sharon, had more recent versus some of these older ones.
It was just helpful to provide this background.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
St. Mary's is probably a 30-year-old charter. St. Mary's is city in Elk County. It's a big, it's,
I'm sorry, I'm still a little confused. So of the municipalities that have charters, only 10?
according to the state census, when they published the last census and Fred, I don't know when that was, they recorded 10 charters, of all the charters they had on record, of having term limits. Since that was published, because I went through the list of names, there's at least 3 that I know of
Well,
that weren't there.
How many municipalities total have charters?
I would guess 13 at a minimum.
No.
No,
have
no, no,
charters.
you guys are not
Have
understanding.
charters, oh gosh, it's in the hundreds.
No, it's not.
And remember,
It's-
there's-
No, it's like about 80.
Okay, so there are 80, that's
They're about 80.
67 don't have term limits.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
So
can we,
there are
one at a
80
time,
There are
please?
80
Let's not.
plus total home rule charters.
Yes.
And of those, only 13
Right.
put term
Yes.
limits.
Right.
That's what I was trying
I'm
to
sorry.
understand.
She said 13.
I wasn't listening. I was trying to answer the question about the data.
That's the denominator.
I apologize. I didn't know
What
what Peter
she
was
was trying to
talking
find
about.
out.
I wasn't listening, and my fault. I started.
49.
But if you remember the map in your presentation, it had many,
Yeah.
that's where I was getting. I
Okay.
was thinking it was a lot more than there was. There were 80s. So 12% have charters? 12% have term limits?
Term limits.
1 out of, 8 out of 10, 10 out of 80, 13 out of 80.
Are any of these the size of Lancaster? Reading City is probably.
Reading City, Wilkes-Barre, Wilkes-Barre. Nanticoke is smaller, it's a newer one. Altoona is smaller, it's a newer one. Luzerne obviously is a
Is
county.
big county, yeah.
I think if there's a trend at all, it was that the newer ones had term limits.
Right,
The older charters, not so much.
right, okay.
The suburban Philadelphia charters, Plymouth Township, Upper Providence, Westchester, Norristown, they seem to have the same type of term limits. They're in the 5 counties around Philadelphia.
Thanks for clarifying.
Most of these are smaller
Right,
in terms of the
Yeah.
municipalities.
Yes.
Are
Yeah,
smaller.
I did not see a term limits in Pittsburgh or Philadelphia, or Lackawanna. The 6 county charters I looked at, I did not see a term limits, except for Luzerne.
I was gonna say 2, but I don't
There are no term limits in Scranton, which is also home rule in this.
know.
So, discussion?
Question.
Yeah.
I heard you just mention, Lynn, that Scranton is similar in population and
They're
does,
about 70,000.
close, okay. The point, you're saying that they do have term limits?
Oh, there's almost 80.
They do not have term limits.
They do not have term.
And
They
how
are-
long,
They also, that's an older charter.
Right.
The charters from the 70s.
From the
I
70s.
believe.
Which, what you were saying is that the newer charters
I'll put in
are starting to put term limits.
The newer charters, similar like cities.
Right.
And county, has more acceptance of term limits.
do you have any idea why that is? Why there's more of the newer ones that are putting term limits?
I think term limits is more of a discussion item today than it was 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
40 and 50. Remember, home rule is 50-some years old.
Yeah.
Right.
So, what did you say?
72.
72, so it's 50-some years.
The mayor has a question. or
The mayor has an opinion because the person in the room with opinion is right there.
Yeah, she should. Here she comes.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think quite honestly why term limits have become more popular more recently is because that there has been a lot of reasons why cities have gotten into a situation where they needed home rule to begin with, and that was a lot because of going into Act 47 and municipal bankruptcy. And we haven't always benefited, cities in Pennsylvania have not always benefited from strong fiduciary leadership. Now, I'm going to take off my hat as mayor just for a minute and offer you my 2 cents about this. Over the last 50 years, we have been very fortunate in the city of Lancaster to have 5 mayors. That tells you something. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
I would like to say to that point, just as we're talking about controllers, fiduciary leadership is lacking. Just as we were talking about controllers, just point of reference, point of what we were talking about earlier.
Could you expand on that?
Just what the mayor said, that more recently, there are cities that have less or are lacking fiduciary responsibility. And because of that, there should be something in place that has a strong, the watchdog, as everyone was calling it, there should be that role. Yeah.
So what you're saying is kind of like perhaps the term limits could be a kind of like a watchdog in a sense, or a way of putting a means for if something were going in a negative way, that there would be be able to be capped at some point.
Right, and I'm not necessarily saying that there should be term limits because of that, because I agree with what Brian said and Tony about, what do the people want?
Yeah.
So I'm in between at the moment. I'm just taking in all of the facts.
Can I throw out something pretty crazy, I guess?
No, Tony.
No, yeah, you're right. Keep it in the box.
Is it about term limits?
Sort of. Yeah. It's sort of. So
Kidding.
not necessarily term limits, but like as a mechanism for control, is it could we empower the residents to essentially give them that power that other countries have, like a vote of no confidence in somebody? And
You're talking about like a recall?
yeah,
Recall has been ruled.
no recall.
There is a decision decided that.
Too radical.
Have to go to Argentina.
Can't do that.
Yeah.
Shut down again.
I'm used to it.
Okay, we haven't heard from everyone yet. We have a show of hands. I'm showing 3 no's and 2 with terms, 1 at 2 terms and 1 at 3 terms.
So just call it a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
No term.
No terms, Mr. Barber? Ms. Ruffo?
Go ahead, let's go down the line, I guess.
No terms.
No more than 20. No. No term.
You already know, yes.
I want term limit.
You do.
You do.
No term limits.
Can you come back to me?
Term limits.
Mr. Feldman? No. All right, we have 5 to 3. Okay, so,
5 to 2.
or
Yeah, Ms.
2,
Cook
I'm
was-
sorry.
Ms. Cook, did you want to weigh in at the end, or?
I'd say term limits.
Now it's 5 to 3.
Yeah. All right,
Okay,
okay, thank you.
so
Where are we at with the next question?
Well, I was just going to pass it out.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to do resign to run?
Yeah, we
Let's go
can
through
do.
it.
Let's continue here with a couple more questions for the mayor, if that's okay.
We have about 10 more minutes, so
Okay.
we'd be able, okay.
Okay. Next question is the resign to run issue. Again, we talked about that with council. Is this the same question for the mayor? Should the mayor need to resign from office to run for another office? And if so, at what level? Federal, state, county, or local?
I think it's especially important. It's like this is a strong mayor government that so far we are talking about designing. I think the mayor's focus should be on the city. I would be in support of resign to run for basically all the offices that they could run for.
Mr. Feldman?
I don't support a resign to run rule for the other positions, and I don't support it for this, particularly for this office. Honestly, in this county, it's no longer a supreme minority position to be a Democrat, but you're not in the majority, and the mayor of the city is typically the highest elected official with the widest distribution and known persona in the county, regardless of whether they represent you where you live or not. For whatever reason, that seems to be the case. And so I think that a resign to run rule on the office of the mayor would have a punitive impact on democratic elections and competitive elections for higher level offices in particular.
I'm agreeing with Mr. Feldman. resign to run puts an unfair disadvantage to somebody who's running for an office from an elected office that somebody who is just employed in the private sector doesn't have. If it were possible to require like a leave of absence in which the person could get the job back.
So that's what
But
it said.
if I were to resign, if I were to leave my job so I could run for mayor, I could theoretically arrange so that the following November, if I lose, my job gets reinstated. I can start back again. You resign from city council, you can't come back and say, okay, now I'm going to come back and get the job because you lost. So I would argue, no, I don't think that resigning to run, resigning if you win, absolutely, but not just to run.
Okay, got it. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think they should have to resign, at least from the federal, state, and the county. And I also agree with what Brian said. I would like to see that they would resign, maybe the designated mayor that the mayor-elect serves, because I don't think you're going to run a federal election and have the heart and the best interest of the people in the city that you're running for. If you're running a federal election, you're all over that state. And I think, if we set a time that if they wouldn't win, they could come back, I'd be okay with that. But I definitely think that they should resign. I also think what we're seeing a lot in government is that the elected officials or the candidates are using the local government as stepping stones. So nobody's in there because they care about the city like it used to be 50 years, and I want the city to get better. And that's why, it was like back then you didn't want term limits because someone was in it to really make it better. Nowadays, they're using this.
Please don't disparage the present members of our.
I'm not
elected
talking
bodies.
about nobody. I'm talking in general.
People,
I'm talking in general. I'm not even talking about Lancaster City. I'm saying that the city council members, in general, I'm not putting no items mentioned, no names or
I don't
anything.
think that's very fair.
Well, I'm sorry.
It's just an
It's my
opinion.
opinion, and I'm entitled to my opinion.
Yes.
And my opinion is that they use it as a stepping stone. And I'm not just referring to Lancaster. I'm just saying in general in government, we see it all the time.
I think
We
it's
see
been
that people,
My
they run.
opinion is it's been that way
But
since
to
the
say
dawn
they
of
don't
time.
care, that's not.
Okay, but.
That's,
Well,
that's
it's
just
just
But
my
I think we're-
opinion.
Yeah, if
It's
we
my opinion.
stay on the topic of
be
just
incorrect.
resign
She
to
could be
run
incorrect.
and
Right.
I get your point, Carolyn, yes.
Yeah.
It's a matter of ambition.
Right.
Are they in it for today's service, or are they in it to get recognition?
Yes.
And that's the essence of resign to run.
Right.
Are you willing
Exactly.
to allow someone to divert their attention away from their current office so they can pursue a higher office?
yes.
Right.
And so far, I got 2 and 2.
Go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, I was interested in what you were saying. So you were suggesting that for federal and state, the mayor could resign, install whoever is
She
their
already has the
That-
designate.
the designee.
Yeah.
If that mayor loses whatever
She would
office they're
Come
running
back and
for,
finish.
Hold on.
the mayor could then come back and be reinstated. Is that what you're
That's what I
suggesting?
think. Yep.
Well, I don't know that
That
that's
actually
possible.
legal?
Yeah, I don't know that that's possible. Once they resign, you have a vacancy.
If you have resigned to run, once they resign, there's a
I agree.
vacancy.
Right.
What I heard you say was they would use the designee mayor, say, I'm not going to be around for 60 days
Exactly.
or whatever.
Leave of absence.
Leave of absence, and I'm going to run for state senate or senator for the Pennsylvania Senate. And then come back and say, I lost, well, where's my job again? So resign to run would stop that, because once you resign, you can't come back.
So
Right.
I want to build
That's
on
what I thought.
this idea here
Yeah, it's a vacancy.
and a little bit of yours too.
The next
So I do hear you about the argument, like, highest elected official in Lancaster City is a pretty big name for a Democratic Party countywide. Totally get that. And I hear you guys on, feeling somewhat how I feel about resigning focus. I might be making a mistake there. Were you also for resign to run?
No.
No. All right. So I made a mistake there. But how you're feeling about it, I'm actually curious how you guys feel about the idea of letting people who resign their positions on council put together a short list for their appointment. Because I think that's a way to keep people, like what they're trying to build on, they can maintain that with someone they trust. Like, hey, you don't get a full term, but like, for example, I'm resigning to run for another position. I think you would be great to build on the work that I've already been working on. I'd like to put you on a short list to put the council for your reappointment. And I think that could help increase the speed of how we fill these vacancies. Because we're not vetting anyone who wants to apply anymore. It's like, hey, I'm resigning, I think arguably for a positive reason. I wouldn't want to give somebody who's removed forcefully from office the ability to put forth a short list. But someone who's wanting to make their community, whether it's the state or federal community or even the county, I think it's reasonable to say like, hey, you want to step away from this position and go into that one. You can make sure that your successor for the rest of your term is somewhat in line with your views. And I think that would also help minor parties who want to build up in a place like Lancaster City. Because right now, like for example, if a Green Party or a Libertarian, which I don't think they qualified for minor party status in the county last year, I don't recall, but let's say they were trying to rebuild this thing in the city and they got someone on council, which is what I would advise them to do, frankly. What guarantee do they have if they get a desire to run for the state house somewhere, that maybe they see a race that's competitive in their area? What desire? I think I made my point. I'm rambling at this point.
And I would just say to you that they serve out your term. If you won for 4-year term, serve it out and then go ahead and run for your state office.
I mean,
But,
yeah, but
you know, serve out your term.
I have a question too.
Oh, Liz, and then Mr. Feldman.
Okay, so, well, you had your hand up, but I was
Oh, I didn't
actually.
notice. I'm sorry, Carl, did you have it up?
You
there?
can-
I did, but just go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Okay, so what you're saying, Darlene, I just want to go back to that. Are you saying that you're not for resign to run because you actually want them to resign in a sense like temporary? It's not really resigning,
But they
it's,
said we can't do that. What I
cannot do that.
suggested.
Yeah, it's not legal.
okay,
They said it's
all
not
right.
legal.
You have a vacancy then, you need to fill the vacancy once they resign. There's
So-
a vacancy.
Resign.
So I think that,
So why wouldn't it be a leave of absence instead of a resignation? Why couldn't it be a leave of absence? Like I'm going to have surgery or something and I'm going to be away for 6 months.
That's the incapacitated.
Yeah,
Is that
you could
incapacitated?
designate,
No,
you could
that's-
provide
okay.
something to
Couldn't we
designate.
provide something that would say a leave of absence and while you're running instead of resignation?
Well, we'd have to define, I think, the mayor's short-term absence or something.
Yeah.
And the mayor declares their short-term absence, whether or not a campaign matches the length of time a deputy can serve. You know, if you're only going to allow a deputy to serve a certain amount of time, you're only going to let the mayor be vacant for a certain amount of time.
Right.
Follow me?
An elected
And we'll have to draft it so that you don't have a
I get
loophole
it.
like that.
200
That,
years.
you know, I'm going to start running in January and I'll see
Right.
it in May.
Year,
Um,
2 years.
Right? Otherwise, you've made a designated mayor that has more power
Gotcha.
than the 45 days to replace the mayor in a normal vacancy.
Got you.
That's
So
the
I-
nuance we'll have to work into.
I'm basically saying that I think that the resigning should only occur if they're running for a federal position.
State.
Mr. Feldman, you had your hand up.
No, we'll just keep going. Or no.
Let's, you want to get a.
Well, it is
Yeah, we
4:29.
don't have a consensus yet at this point.
I'm not in favor of resigning.
Okay, so you're a no. Okay, so you're a no, all right.
Ms. Rufo,
He's gonna call it a no. Ms. Rufo's a no?
I don't know, are we gonna do hands?
Well, yeah, we could do
okay,
hands now,
yes,
yes.
okay. Those
What are
who,
we doing hands?
Let Fed call it.
okay. Those who want resign to run,
want it.
Yes, this is
they
yes.
want it. 3.
3.
Those who do not want resign to run. 4
Okay, 4, we have 1.
and 1.
Yeah, because, yes, resign to run, but just at the federal level. Like,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay,
So that's the two questions.
so we have a tie.
So it's 4 and 4 then. Okay, I thought it was, that's 4 to 4, okay.
Yeah, we'll have to
We'll
revisit
have to
it.
revisit that, okay.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Good time.
Okay, we're at 8:30. What we'd like to do as we close up our portion, you had asked us to prepare some initial draft language so that you could see what draft language would look like. So based on most of the issues that you've dealt with council, we put together Article 2, which will deal with the legislative responsibilities in draft form. And it'll give you a feel for what your decisions look like embodied in draft language. And Mr. Cross is going to distribute those. We're just asking that you take that with you, look at it, and, certainly it's in draft. We can discuss it further. We will discuss it further as we move through the process.
By counter right, there should be.
Thank you. And any of us can call you and ask you questions between now and our next.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely, anytime.
This is, we're going to be shifting into, once we finish the mayor, and then we move to some appointed, but we'd like to start showing you the results of this
Right.
semi-frustrating but essential work, which is, this is the fruit of what you've done. It may not look like a lot of words, but every single sentence represents a decision you made, and that's probably not exaggerated.
Yeah.
So we will then shift to more of a, let's discuss the draft language. So we're building the charter as opposed to let's make these little building block decisions. That'll probably come after the 23rd, because that'll be your financial, then we're going to try to, that's a financial presentation. We're going to try to deliver the budget, and finance come out of subcommittee, other subcommittees report out. So we'll be building the charter that way. So this is for you to review, mark it up. There's some highlighted sections in there where there was some ambiguity, no decision.
Do you feel like we're still on track?
We have drafted 2 articles, one for the subcommittee. This is the main one. We are now ready to draft a controller and a mayor, sort of. We'll have some holes in the mayor and in the controller, obviously. So you're building the local government. Then ordinances, administrative code.
Initiative and referendum.
Ethics, if you have it, those kind of things. And those things will be more drafted and then presented than they are, because they're more mechanical. They're more drafted and presented than they are, let's talk about how many days an ordinance has to be before. We're going to try to, remember, the basic premise is the third-class city code optional Plan A works for the city. So we will use that as the basis for those kind of operations that are basic city operations, ordinances and things like that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Carl, I'm sorry.
I just had a quick question. So the section you highlighted, for example, council members shall receive no other benefits with the exception of reimbursement of legitimate expenses. That's an example of,
That's
we
an
didn't
open
come
issue.
to kind of a final conclusion on this matter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
no
why
question.
that's highlighted, so that you can come back. We need to come back and revisit that issue.
So review of the language, because most of it is consensus. That language that needs further discussion, think about it. You'll have time to consider it. Okay?
There's
a few. All right, Mr. Chairman, it's all yours.
Is there more than one item that is highlighted?
I only remember there was one, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you think we missed one.
The benefits.
The benefits, paying benefits was
It's also in boldface.
Okay.
Photocopying doesn't highlight as well, but
Right.
it's boldface, so that's the only one I see too. Okay, we're back in regular session. Next order on the, back in regular session, next order on the agenda, subcommittee reports. Ms. Rufo, public engagement.
Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. Can somebody else go?
Absolutely. Has the preamble committee met?
Nope, no report.
Okay, so they just haven't met.
Sorry.
We will be back. Ethics committee, Mr. Feldman.
So we moved our regular meeting over the time that it would normally be held, and then it is coincidental that the next meeting is actually over the same period of time. So I'm going to try and schedule some additional rescheduling of the meeting between the two. So we can get together and talk about
Okay.
what we need to do next.
Okay, budget and finance, Mr. McGran could not make it. He did email out a report, and I think it went to everybody. I know he had talked to me about
Yes,
doing that.
did go.
So you all received a written report for your review, and then pending that, we can include it in the record later.
I'm ready now.
All right, So back to public engagement.
Yeah, I did send a report out to everybody also, so you can read this, but our frequently asked questions has been added to the website. It's being translated so that we can have Spanish language physical copies as well as English language physical copies. The website itself translates in multiple languages, so we are continuing our planned email communications. One went out this morning. We currently, or as of April 25th, we had over 200 subscribers. So I ask all of you to tell your contacts to sign up to get emails from us. Okay, this is really important that we get that number up higher. You all have neighbors, you all have friends and family that live in the city. Encourage them to sign up to get our emails. We did the neighborhood event, the first one yesterday, right, yesterday. Tony and I are doing the one on the 8th. Pete, John, and Brian are doing the one on the 15th. On the 22nd, we have Brian, and we need somebody else to sign up for that because we have determined that we need at least 2 commissioners at each one of our events. Open Streets, we have Amy, Tony, Carl, and John. That's a long day, so I figured we could sort of split up the day. For the African American Cultural Fair and Parade on the 21st, no one has signed up, so I assume we just won't be there that day. On the 22nd, we have Tony, Pete, and Carl. On the 23rd, we have a meeting, so we will not be there that day. On the 24th, I've signed up to be with you. On the 25th, I think there isn't anything because the parade starts at 3. So that, assuming there's no real vendor table by 3. I haven't gotten confirmation from the organizers, but again, that's in the report, so you guys can read that at your leisure. I would appreciate if somebody would volunteer for the 22nd. And if others have time to do the African American Cultural Parade on the 21st, we can add that back in.
I thought I did do more
Yeah,
than one, so I'm gonna check.
I signed up for one of those days.
Yeah,
for
the
either-
25th,
Oh, okay.
which I don't think we need, but I'll get confirmation.
I would like somebody to add the 22nd as well.
Yes.
I think since I'm the only one on
No.
there,
That's the, yeah.
are we talking the same thing?
I cannot be there the 22nd.
Oh, that's right. Pete is not going to be on
You still have Tony and Carl
for one event.
for one of the events,
Yeah.
and Brian is solo.
I'll look at my calendar, Brian. I might be able to make it, but I'm not positive. I'll see what I can do.
I just wanted to say the block party was really nice the other night. That was the first one that they've done. There'll be a bunch. And we gave away all the cards that I had to give away to people. We talked to people I think we wouldn't have engaged with otherwise. It was worth our while.
That's great. Good.
Do we have more cards?
Yes.
Oh, okay. And they have Spanish, because I think it's good. A lot of people really like the barcode.
Yep.
That they can just go to the barcode,
QR code.
the QR code,
Yeah.
and respond. So I think that was good.
We're tracking all of the outreach, so if you guys can estimate how many people you talk to, that would be helpful.
Thousands.
And the work that still needs to be implemented is civic organization outreach. So to me, what that means is we go to an organization that wants a presentation. So again, I'm asking all the commissioners, if you have contacts, please reach out and ask them if they'd like a presentation, and then we can organize that. I have reached out to SACA's leadership. I'm just waiting for a date. And then we're also going to be planning public forums or hearings of some kind, and recording a video of the presentation to add to the website, which I think is going to end up on my shoulders, but I'm going to ask John, even though he's not here.
That's how things get assigned.
Yeah,
Show up.
yeah, and ask him to help me. Liz, you could too. You don't have to be on camera. You can just use your voice. Maybe. And then we need to.
As long as I'm not on camera, I'm okay with it.
We need to continue to identify events to attend in June and July. So I believe I have a list from the mayor, but I haven't looked at it in a couple days because we did not have our meeting this week.
So, just thinking about the future, right? So the key time of public engagement is going to be after the charter is written and we're gonna be kind of out in the public. And a lot of the civic organizations, their calendars get filled. Like I'm thinking about, like, so the Rotary Club of Lancaster, it's like, you've gotta be like 3 to 6 months ahead to get on their presentation.
Yeah, so that's the kind of
So-
information I need
Like
from
I
all
can-
of you. I can't do this
Yeah.
by
No,
myself,
I'm just,
so if you.
I'm saying that broadly.
What
Yeah.
information are you asking for?
So if there's other organizations that you know that we should be presenting to, like, and I'm thinking, we should be thinking about the September, October timeline, once the charter has been written and we're kind of taking that to the streets, that's the real critical time. Like right now, I mean, it was good. The event, the mayor's event last night was great, just to give kind of broad brush of what are we doing, what's going on, but people are like, so what's in the charter? Well, we don't know yet, and it's still being worked on. So, okay, but just public awareness, there is
Sign up
this
for
charter.
the emails, you get updates.
Right, so, but then, so my understanding is, we're gonna be targeting to have, everything kind of wrapped up from the writing of this, and our kind of, this is the
Then
chart,
we-
this is what's
then
gonna
we
go
switch,
to.
right. Right now, what we're in is, what did you just use to phrase? It's like, we're like letting people know what we're doing.
Yeah,
And then we're gonna switch to, this is what the charter is.
Yeah.
Right? Like right now, we're like, home rule is X, Y, Z. And this is what we, as the commission, are doing right now. And then once we have a draft, we're gonna switch to explaining what is in the charter.
Yeah, so I would suggest that, if you have like, not to disparage the efforts that we're doing right now, but if you're gonna have one shot to talk to a big group of people, that we probably ought to save that for once we have the charter, so that we can actually present what it is that they will be voting on in
Yeah.
a stronger,
So-
higher level of information.
But it's good that you're mentioning to make sure that we talk to them now to get
Yeah.
them scheduled,
Get 'em on the
because
schedule.
we will hear a lot of them say, oh, we're booked up.
Yeah,
Right,
so that's
so-
what I'm saying. So
Yes.
Pete has just said this to me, and I will ask, can you please
Yes.
send me an email? Because I
Yes.
will not remember unless I
No,
get
well,
an
can-
email.
Yeah, I'll make the contacts there, so that's fine.
Okay, great, perfect, even better. But like, when we first started the Public Engagement Committee, we sort of had this very rough schedule. You guys tell me if I got this wrong, but, so in early August, we'll have a draft of the charter completed. At that point, we're gonna have public hearings and give time to adjust the draft based on feedback. And then around August 6th, we have to request that the ballot question be put on the ballot. So that's like a formal request to the election office at the county, right? And then on around September 7th, which is 60 days before the election, the charter will be in its final form. And then from there, September and October is like a huge education campaign about what is in the charter. And perhaps, we haven't talked about this in detail, but perhaps we have a big event at the Ware Center. Perhaps we have multiple neighborhood group meetings. One of the things that Millsy has done is she sent an email to like the 10 or 12 neighborhood groups and introduced them to me and said that we, as a commission, could come to one of their regular scheduled neighborhood meeting groups and give a presentation. No one has yet responded, but hopefully we will get something from them.
So just in terms of kind of our big picture planning of stuff, will we be meeting as a committee in September and October? Will there be a necessity of us meeting as a committee in
As a
September?
committee or a commission?
A commission, I'm sorry.
I don't know.
I don't know.
There was the idea, the public hearings was into late summer, fall. I don't know if that's,
The public hearing is to get input on the citizens on the draft charter.
Right.
and we have to hold a minimum of one.
You have to have one, you can manage as you want.
I
Yeah.
think we should assume we're
Just
still
assume.
meeting, because even if what we're doing is educating the public,
Mm-hmm.
we all need to talk about that
Okay.
and know who's
that's
doing
fine.
what.
I'm just,
Okay.
Because
I'm just
Elizabeth, John, and I cannot do all of the education.
I'm just thinking that if we're, I'm envisioning a schedule that we're having a lot of public interactions.
Yeah.
And just trying to
Yeah, I'd like to build that schedule, and I would just really request that you all help make those contacts, get a date from people, send that information to us, and we can take it from there.
Anything else?
Other business, I do got something.
I got stuff on the.
Well, any other on subcommittee reports? Any old business? I don't think there is any.
Well, I don't know if it's old business. I mentioned this last week. I've been thinking over the last week about
I'll ask DJ.
what I exactly would want to talk to you guys about. I think it's important that we look into how residents feel they may be able to be better represented in the city in whatever sense that is. I'd like to, and I'd also, at the same time, I think there's a conversation to be had about how do we be more inclusive to the city residents and also better the city residents, empower them, maybe like quote unquote, educate and train them in the functions of government. I'd like to put forward a motion to have a subcommittee on equitable representation and civic education
For the commission?
for the commission,
Or for the charter?
subcommittee for the commission.
Okay, there's a motion to, what did you call it?
Equitable representation and civic education.
Just a clarification, civic education, how is that different from the Public Engagement Committee?
So public engagement, the way I'm seeing it is this is more about our engagement with the public. Civic education is what we can do to facilitate the education or training, quote unquote, of a resident in the functions of how you participate with your government generally, not specific to our body.
I don't know that that's within the purpose of this commission. I mean, I think it's a great idea, but I don't know that that's
a good idea.
the purpose of this commission.
Any help from PE?
I do see what you're saying. I put it forward in that way because even though we can't make a requirement like jury duty, I think jury duty is an example of one of those functions that like not everybody enjoys doing it, but there's a really important reason why we make people participate in jury duty for the function of our society. And I'm just curious if we can explore that kind of notion, if there's anything we can do on a local level to help facilitate people being participants in the process and getting education at the same time.
Okay, rules of order, there's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second it.
There is a second, so now,
We can have discussion. I would just say, Tony, that I was looking through a lot of the charters and a lot of the books, and they do have articles in there for requiring citizens' participation, that the charter is written. So it could be stuff that's just put in the charter, and I highlighted it, but I'm not, ready to just get it out and share it now, but I could show you there's a lot of charters that require citizen participation.
Please do.
Yeah, I can do that.
Can you send that to everyone?
Yeah.
Can you figure out how to send it to
There you go. Make copies.
Mr. Feldman.
Make copies.
So a common function of the charters is they have components around, I guess, referendum, putting stuff on the council agenda, things of that nature. It's not something we've discussed yet extensively, but maybe having heard this, what I'm thinking about is that sounds like it's in line with what's being discussed here. Is that something that will be coming through our decision-making process in the near future?
Initially a referendum, yeah.
Yeah.
We could bring it up.
Because there are certainly some decisions to be made about how, like, do you only have referendum? Do you have getting it on the council budget, council agenda? Does the council have to agree to it to get it on the ballot? How many signatures and votes does it need? Things like that we'll have to work out. So I think we can manage it on the timeline that you prescribed for
We could
us.
bring something to the commission as a whole. We walk through initiative and referendum and the mechanics of it, how far you want to go with it. There's a variety of, as you said, Carl, there's a variety of methods for that.
It's good enough for me.
Any other discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I'll just mention that the reason I'm putting this about in this way is because I know that we are at this moment, at least, we have moved past districting, but I still get the sense that we want to look into some aspects of what districting could be positive for. And so the reason I put this forward is to just explore some of those ideas without taking more time from the general body.
Okay, and my question is going to be, I don't really understand what you're suggesting that this subcommittee do.
Yeah, not necessarily looking at districting and only districting, but like taking that original concept that's been discussed and saying, okay, so there's some level of concern about districting. Is there something we could do with the charter to incorporate other inclusion in a different way? That I personally would love to see it, some mechanism for residents, like, hey, you participate, it's regionally based, and you're getting an education. Maybe that's where like financial education of the residents comes into play, for example. Because I think that this is an opinion, I don't know how true this is, but it seems like there's been some level of ebb and flow generationally. My great-grandparents were of I think the greatest generation, as they're called, and very civically engaged. They are part of why I do what I do. And I think I've read before that there's like a downward trend that's coming back up again. I think we need to focus on how residents can be positive forces in the city, getting educated in the procedures. I just don't know what the charter can do, and so I want to look into it.
What is the section of the charter that is typically called the portion where the initiative and referendum is? Is that what it's called?
It's usually a standalone article called initiative and referendum. How much power do you want to give to both initiative and referendum? Initiative, as Carl mentioned, citizens' power to bring things to the council for consideration. Citizens' powers to bring things to the referendum, to demand an ordinance and have the ordinance approved not by council but by referendum or the ballot. There's a different level you have to decide. There's also other referendum items.
No, I mean, it could be related, but that's not where my focus was at. Like, the referendum conversation, I thought was going to be part of our deliberations here. Yeah, I just think there's other things that we've mentioned some interest in looking into, but we have a lot of work to do here, which is why I'm just proposing the subcommittee to kind of work through some of this. And maybe we'll hear from more residents, like one of the two tonight that spoke, just like, I'm interested in it, but I don't know what to do with it. I think it's worth looking into further. Just try not to shut down the conversation and see if something else can grow out of it.
Other discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor of forming a subcommittee for equitable representation and civic education? Do I have that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, no, and civic education.
Civic education, that's right, equitable representation.
My brain flipped it at the last moment.
And civic education.
Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay.
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 I think you have to go by hand.
I only heard two votes. I'll go by a show of hands. All in favor of the motion, please raise their hand. 1, 2. All opposed to the motion? 3.
I'm not really.
I don't really understand.
I don't understand it.
I'm
I don't really.
Well, okay, I'm sorry. The vote's just been taken. The motion fails. Now, if you would like, you can discuss with Mr. Dastra and decide what was going on. At this point, the motion failed.
I have other business.
Other business.
Yes. I want to, and I don't know where this comes in, but I want to ask, how long do we keep council recordings and meetings? Is that just a year? And if it is a year, is that something we can change in the charter?
Like a records retention policy?
Yes.
This was something I had asked. This is different than the videotapes? Is that?
I don't know that you asked about the videotapes, but that's what I'm asking about the recordings. How long city council is recorded and streamlined? How long do we currently keep it? And is that something that we could add into the charter?
Okay, first, I thought I had answered you. I apologize if I didn't. I thought I'd email you. I checked, and video recordings are kept on YouTube, so they exist for the lifetime of Google, I guess, would be it. They're not retained for a fixed limit, they're infinite.
But the city,
Minutes-
the city
minutes are-
don't keep, the city don't keep them, they keep them up for about a year.
The city doesn't, my understanding is the city does not keep them at all.
Yeah, they keep them online. Like to my knowledge, I haven't seen any be removed. You sometimes gotta look searching wise for the right date, but they keep them online, but there's no legal requirement that they keep anything.
And
Like,
is that something that we could do?
I would caution you against it, namely because I think there's unintended consequences for that. Under the current law, and the charter will change it, current law that's across the board for all states is that the official record of the city is the minutes of the meeting. Those have to be maintained in perpetuity. Technology is going to continue to change. So, what you put in
That is
today
true.
may or may not be there tomorrow. The mechanisms for even recordings, there is also a cost to maintaining that data.
That's right.
That's true.
And it will get significant if you are maintaining if you're requiring the city to actually maintain somewhere
center.
Physical resources of meeting video, depending on how the technology.
Remember, meetings used to be on cassettes,
Yeah, they used to
right?
record them,
And old, you're talking old technology, so.
Mixtape,
knows?
but they kept them.
mixtapes.
Yeah,
So how long will we keep the home rule recording of these meetings? Is it 5 years?
They're being live streamed, and again, the city isn't maintaining the recording.
Right, but I think the book says that these records and the minutes have to be
The
kept
minutes
5
will be kept
years.
for 5 years,
Okay.
the
And I-
recordings are not the official
Okay.
record, the minutes are.
Right, and I think that's what I'm getting at, because I keep saying our minutes are not detailed enough about the discussions that we're having, that if 5 years from now, they want to say, let's change the charter, they can look back in our minutes, and they're not going to get why we made the decisions that we made. And I think we need to have a record of that. So I'm just bringing it up. I'm not asking for a vote or action at this time,
Okay,
but I will bring it up.
If I may make a clarification then, just to add to this. Following Robert's Rules of Order, minutes are a record of, officially a record of motions and votes taken. They do not tend to keep track of specific discussions for the motions
Right.
or discussions outside of motions.
Right.
At any point, anybody may request that something be added to the record, and it would be included in the minutes. It can be done in writing. So if, for example, Ms. Rufo wanted to say, well, I have a written report for the public, I would like to add this to the record, it would be included in the minutes verbatim. Unless there is a request to add it specifically, the minutes would state that this was discussed, and that's the usual procedure. So anything can be added if a member of the commission requests that it be added to the record.
I just saw it in different charters, but I'll bring it. I just wanted
Okay.
to just get some answers. And then I wanted to talk about, what is our policy? We had the tie vote, like he said, on the districting. And I thought Robert's Rules of Order, if it was a tie vote, it got tabled. Because since we didn't put anything in our bylaws to say this is how a tie vote happened. So what really happened, it was like you voted twice to make it say, to appear that way
Yeah.
because you made the decision, because it was a 4-4. And tonight we had a 4-4 and we said that means it gets discussed later.
Well, that wasn't an official motion. I'll defer to the parliamentarian on the specifics. My understanding has been a tie vote goes to the group not making the motion. So if you make a motion for something and it ties 4-4, it does not go to, I guess the term would be the prevailing party. Or the prevailing party is who wins, whose devotion goes on the terms of the motion.
Let's let Barry wait.
So I,
You can
like I
just
said,
email me, because I don't want the time to go on. I just
Okay.
want to raise them so that they're here at the commission level. 'Cause I
and
have-
the deliberations are a little bit different. They're not official motions, they are consensus. Then I think that's where the difference is.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Anything else?
Yeah, I would like to see if I can get some reference or some Yeah, some reference to the Municipal Authority Act and what that is, if I could get a copy of that for future meetings.
I think there's a manual.
Yeah, there's
Yeah, well, can I get copy of that? And then also, I would like to know if I can, okay, thank you. I would like to see if I can get information. I think, Barry, you said we have like 31 authorities and commissions. Is that about right?
30 currently.
Oh.
It's on the city's website.
So there's 30. If I could get reference to the responsibilities and who can serve on and the term.
Darlene, you can, with all due respect, you can go into the city ordinances and all that information for each board and authority is laid out by ordinance
Right.
in the city ordinances.
I'm just asking because there are
We are
questions
gonna
that
get
I'm
to
going to
that,
bring
right?
up. There's questions that we're going to bring up when we talk about commissions and authorities. So I was thinking like you're giving us stuff now to look over so that we can ask your
I don't
questions.
have,
No, I was talking to PL, sorry.
well, but again, I'm advising
Okay.
as well that that's all readily available to everybody on the city's website.
Okay. Okay.
I know you have a lot of questions about that,
Exactly.
so I would ask for the sake of all of us, like
have
the
it.
conversation, if you could speak with PEL in advance,
Mm-hmm.
and, because I know you were thinking about it in a way that I'm not, but I'm interested in what you've researched,
Mm-hmm.
and I would like to have some of that information in advance before we come to the meeting. Is that making sense to you?
Okay.
I just had a question.
Before the meeting, we have
Yeah,
time.
like give
We
them
can do the
time
research,
so that
I
they
would bring
can
it.
give
That's
us
why I was
some
asking.
information
Yeah, I've always said, don't be
beforehand.
afraid to call us.
Yeah. Great.
Or email.
Just made my.
You get to meet the grandson, too.
Yes, you do. That's on Zoom.
Yeah. Ms. Cook?
I just wondered if we had any other public comments since our last meeting, public online submitted.
We had one, I just haven't had time.
Oh,
to
okay.
get
But we'll get
at
those
it.
the next time.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
thank
can
you.
definitely get it.
Yeah, thank you.
Just one. He came and spoke, so.
Yeah, just this evening. Okay, any other business?
I just want to make a note about the public comment earlier. This is kind of technical, but I'm saying this because I see Jade in the back. I don't know what you're going to be reporting on tomorrow. If you consider school districts municipalities, which certain laws do depending on the context of what you're looking at,
Not for this.
the school district taxes are way higher than the city taxes at this current moment.
Yes.
I think they're about double.
They're a lot more than what we pay for
So
property taxes, yeah.
just to expand, just in case whatever is popping up in the news tomorrow, I'm just making that note that like the taxation issue is very complex, and while people may think that the city is the highest taxing body that they're affiliated with if they live in the city, like no, it's actually the school district.
I mean, this is a knowable fact, like someone
Right.
could just Google it.
I know, I know
Instead of
that.
wondering.
I thought about saying it earlier. I was hoping you were still back there, but.
Okay, any other business? Okay, other public comments? Do the Henrys have anything to say? All right. Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there objection? Hearing none, we are adjourned.
May the
Okay.
6th, we're having 104.
Hey, Carl,
On the 8th.
could you unplug my,
This
Oh,
is the
yeah.
only thing we have.
Here you go.
And they bring the table, so I'll just meet you at Hanover
All right.
with this stuff.
I remember signing up for something. I was like,
Yeah,
so
it's
the 8th
in,
and the 22nd.
I know, but that's when people say.
yeah,
this
if
is
you
what
look
it
at,
is,
I
and it's
sent
not
the,
true.
It's in the report.
it's in the report, but yes,
You know what I
the
mean? Like,
8th,
so that's not true.
the 8th
Not a fact.
and the 22nd.